Hello?
Thank you.
Sorry.
I would now like to ask for a moment of silence to honor Dave and for his service to this town. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to add, those of you that drove down 3rd Street and know where Lulu lives on the corner, right next to Lulu was Dave's home. And it was the happiest front porch in all of town.
Thank you, Dave. All right, any other announcements? All right, seeing none, let's move on to recognition of visitors and guests. I'd like to welcome everyone. We are pleased to have you in attendance this evening. As you see, we have our new setup so that we have people that are attending virtually as well as in the room. There are microphones that are picking up everything, so it picks up a lot of noise. So it would be appreciated if you could be very quiet when you're sitting and not speaking, because it will pick you up and it'll broadcast you and it'll be on YouTube. And we can even picks up whispers out in the hall. So we may end up closing the door so that if people go into the hall, we don't have more interference with all of this. And it's the first time we're really doing it, so there may be bugs. So have a little patience tonight while we try out this new system. Now, we do welcome your comments, questions, and suggestions. To address the board, please raise your hand, and that goes on YouTube as well, and wait to be called on by the mayor. Then come to the podium and state your name and the street on which you live. If you are on virtual, use the raise hand function to raise your hand and you will show up on the screen. If you are on phone, on virtual, I believe that you have to do *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. You will not be recognized unless you raise your hand. It will help the board to hear and understand your comments if they are clear, concise, and respectful. Please present factual information. Personal attacks of any kind are not in order. During the public comment period, you may address the board on any subject. When speaking on agenda items, please keep your statements directly about the agenda item being discussed. Until you are called on by the mayor, please be respectful of those around you and those who have the floor by remaining silent. Please take any side conversations outside the room and close the door. All right. Who would like to address the board on something that is not on the agenda? Okay, Mr. Markle, Ms. Talbot, Mr. Markle, you had your hand up first.
Do I need to stand?
Yes, you need to come to the podium, just like always.
Okay. I didn't know if my phones had new rules. Real quickly, I just wanted to let you know.
Mr. Markle, name,
Oh, sorry, Thomas Markle, 3027.
thank you.
There was a item that I brought up for discussion at the Advisory Water Committee on Thursday, and that was looking into getting estimates on a new tank, a new 8-gallon tank. And at that time, I did not have any material to present it. I did get that on Friday, and I don't know if you'd rather hear about that now, or if there's a meeting agenda item that would be more appropriate.
You know, it might be more appropriate to do it during the advisory water committee thing. The other thing that would be really helpful if you would send all that via email to the trustees so
Sure.
we could have it in writing in front of us.
Yeah, and I want to be clear, this is not like a contract. I had to give information about our town system in order for them to create an estimate,
Right.
but I didn't represent myself as being associated with the town or speaking for the town.
Okay, that would be fine. Thank you. Yes, Ms. Talbot.
Marilyn Talbot, Box Elder. Yeah, it's not on the agenda. I want to express gratitude to each and every one of you for being on the town council, for giving your time and energy, solving complex problems. I want to thank the staff for everything that you guys are handling all the time. And to the public, I just had a few questions that I wanted to share. And it's this: what if the threat of losing a sense of community and kindness and civility felt as pressing as the thought of losing our water? Because to me, the way that we treat each other is just as important to our happiness, to our long-term survival as the water we drink. And right now, the words and energy that some people bring to these meetings is polluted. And it's dirty with anger and mistrust and disrespect. And I understand that we want to solve this problem. We want you all to solve this problem. But I'm asking that we clean up our behavior. That we start modeling what thoughtful adults can do when they put kindness and respect first. Don't let fear and anger and mistrust drive your actions. What if we could see each other as innocent humans, each of us doing our best to solve the problems in front of us? What if the golden rule were as important as Robert's rules? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Talbot. The clapping is also going to be picked up here, and it's going to obscure people's understanding of this meeting. So please, no public demonstration. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Tracy Mock. I live on the Royal Road. My husband Joe and I have been doing the school crossing. We've been gone for 5 weeks. And it was my understanding that Wendell Boots had come and asked for you to get a hold of Jennifer and you guys could come up with something while we were gone, and nobody did anything. And the kids have been trying to cross by themselves, which really concerns me. I put it on Facebook, nobody volunteers. And we really need to do something about this situation. These are our children.
Agreed. Thank you very much. And thank you for doing what you are doing at the crossing. Yeah.
Could I just ask a question?
Yes.
I just wondered if it would be good if you would say right now, so everyone could hear, where do you cross and what time do you need volunteers? Where do you?
We cross where Subway used to be. My husband and I own that building. We take them across there. We try to walk them, but when it's muddy, you don't want to take them because we don't like to try to cross them back up the parking lot where people are backing out. So we try to take them down and cross them over by where Mrs. Bear lives. And in the morning, we're there from 7:30 until 8 o'clock. In the afternoon, we're there from 3:25 until 4 o'clock. And we're on the opposite side of the street. In the afternoon, we stand by Mrs. Bear's mailboxes and bring them back across this way. But I did have a long conversation with Jennifer today so that we can get this problem taken care of.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, Ms. Watson.
Suzanne Watson. I had a question. I didn't see it in any reports in the packet, but so if you could touch on it sometime in the meeting. I was wondering when the RFP that was due during the first week of February was going to be presented to the board. There's been no discussion of it. So the RFP for the ORC.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Bruner.
A little farther down in the packet is the agenda item dealing with a couple of trustees that went up to look at the water treatment plant. It's a very long, nasty, and completely out of.
Mr. Bruner, when we get to that agenda item, would you please?
These are my comments, mine. This is slightly off topic from that agenda item. But at this time, I would like to present these medals of valor to trustees met and paid.
Please.
To accept these crude but sincere medals of valor for their bravery of their actions to protect the health, safety, and welfare of our community by seeing for themselves the condition and operation of the water treatment plant. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, they are.
All right. Next on the agenda.
True leaders have the confidence to stand alone, the courage to act when others are paralyzed by decorum. They do not set out to be leaders. They become so by their bravery, the quality of the actions, the integrity of their intent. I salute you.
Thank you, Mr. Bruner. All right, anyone else? Yes, Mr. Keenan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I agree with one of the past speakers. I think the accessibility has got to be improved. There seems to be a real need for childish behavior at times. I just don't agree with it. I don't know what well, maybe the therapist can work that out. So I'm here to discuss that it would be nice if we had some audio-visual equipment. I really would like that. I have some presentations that I would like to share with the town, but it'd be far easier if I could have vision. And I think other people feel this way too. The amount of money that this town spends can certainly get the capacity to have an audio-visual display.
Ms. Huey, you have it.
It seems like that would be a great thing. I think that where the alternative schools are, Madam Mayor, did I hear you correctly at our last meeting that there's a planned meeting with the Delta County School District talking about the buildings here? Did I hear that correctly?
They have approached us about the Energy Tech building.
Okay, I would recommend that the people that are already in there are doing a fantastic job. I think that I've heard that they feel that they're really squeezed in very tight corners and are not having full access to the building. And I think they should have full access to the building. Thank you very much. And thank you to the staff and the board and the community. We're all concerned about big issues here. So I hope that we can learn to live and work with each other. And I think that the Onion Players is a fantastic group to start with, if people need to talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan. All right, anyone else? Yes, Ms. Patterson.
My comment, it's not really a question. it's a
No,
comment.
name and,
Shereen Patterson,
thank you,
Rio Grande
thank you.
Avenue. Okay. It's not really a comment. I'm speaking on behalf of the Red Feather Bowman Association. They have been in Leonia since 1962. They've been practicing their outdoor shoots and other activities at the river bottom, where there is now the river park across from the bridge, on the other side of the bridge. Now they're getting pushback from teachers and students that are using what they have been using for the last, what is it now, 60 years? During the summer, spring, fall, for their shoots. Because you all, whoever made the decision on this board to put their little loopy trail there, instead of where it made more sense on the other side of the river, where it was planned since about 1980, all the way to the volunteer park, which would have made a lot more sense, and it would have made a more beautiful and more useful bike, walking, running trail. That's all I have to say. So they're getting lots of pushback, and that's not fair at all.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Patterson. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Would you like to hear changes I'm proposing to the consent agenda before the motion, or would you like to have the motion?
Well, let's go ahead and get the changes
Okay,
put in, and then we can include them in the motion.
all right. Well, first, on page 12 of the packet, at the top of the page, the agenda item is listed as board consideration of DOLA housing assessment grant application and board clarification of the grant review process, yet the entry following that says trustee Knudsen moved to pursue a CDOT revitalizing Main Street, Fifth Street, and Grand Avenue seconded. So I feel like that motion is misplaced under this agenda item. I don't have a fix, but it just seems misapplied. And I think at that meeting, we may have made a motion and voted on whether or not to continue with that housing grant. I don't remember which meeting. So that is an issue of confusion there on page 12. And if you go to page 15, which I believe is, we're now in the next month's, sorry, hold on one second. This is a different meeting agenda minutes. So at the bottom of page 15 is my motion to schedule a special meeting to allow for further discussion of the water system. But what I'd like to suggest is that I had amended that motion prior to us voting. And the amendment was trustee Smith moved to schedule a work session and special meeting. And that is shown on the next page down as if it was a second vote, and it was not. So I think if we would insert work session and special meeting, that would be correct. Which would then require removing the top sentence on page 16 of the packet, because it's a moot. It's kind of a moot issue. So, and my other suggestions for changes are also on page 16. Let me scroll there. So one of the things I would like to suggest that we begin reinstating is that it used to be there was a table included in the minutes. When there wasn't a unanimous vote, the table showed who voted yay and who voted nay. We're no longer identifying the yay and nay votes. And I think it's really important that we know who voted yay and who voted nay in that situation where it's not unanimous. Because I personally would like to look back and see how I voted and might be saying, I wonder why I voted that way. But I think it's important for the record that we know who voted yay and nay. And there's just several instances in this set of minutes where there was not a unanimous vote. There's a, let's see. In the, there is a trustee Thompson moved for an audit of the IT. He was, and in the second to last line in that paragraph, starting with trustee Thompson moved to audit, it says trustee Thompson rescinds. His motion should be rescinds. Below review for possible action, the next bolded text, you need to remove the phrase that we. Oh, it's in the first sentence. Trustee moved to that we adopt, just to clarify. And one last thing on that page is we had voted to go ahead and schedule the regular election, but that is not captured here. It goes on to extending the meetings, but I don't see the motion for that we unanimously agreed to hold the election. Yeah, I did. And I'm just scrolling down to make sure I did not miss that. Yeah, I don't see it in there. So, and thank you. That's the end of my.
Okay, do you want to
Identified.
make a motion then to accept the consent agenda with the changes you noted?
Do I have to enumerate each change?
No,
Okay.
no, they've already been noted.
Okay, very good. I make a motion to accept the agenda, accept the consent agenda with the corrections. What was the word you used?
Yes, no, the correction.
With the corrections that I have identified.
Okay, do I have a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion by the board? Anything from the public? All right, seeing none? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, next is the mayor's report. It is included in the packet.
Right. I'm sorry to interrupt. I had a comment on the consent agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand, Mr. Michael.
But that vote was for amendment.
I'm sorry, please come to the podium.
Sorry.
Thank you.
That motion was for Paige's amendment to the minutes, correct?
No, it was, if the motion included the changes.
Right, yeah, but did you vote on the consent agenda?
Yes, that was the motion to accept the consent agenda with the corrections.
On that
noted.
condition. Okay, my apologies.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Mayor's report. Any questions or comments on the mayor's report? Yes, Mr.
Madam Mayor, I was curious about the last entry in your report. It talks about a challenge grant, and
Yes.
I don't know if this is how you are formally trying to ask the board whether we support that, or whether it's just informing the board that that grant's available.
I just kind of wanted to poll the board to see if there was any interest in me actually writing that grant. I don't have enough information to even identify what we would write it on. My original thought was, some of the improvements in the park that the Parks and Trails Master Plan had noted. For example, maybe the trail winding around the park, or taking out the fence around part of the park, or something like that. But that would be part of, what the board's decision is, what we would like to write that on, or not.
Okay, Madam Mayor, the reason I'm asking the question is because we moved quite a while ago that when we want to consider a grant, we want to know the intent of the grant, so the specifics of it. What the matching requirements, and you've answered that. A rough estimate of staff time. That's what we wanted to have. And so I don't see a rough estimate of staff time, because even if the grant is covering the costs, there's staff time in administering and those types of things. So I'm not in a place where I'd say, yes, let's go for this. I know it's March 15th. It's close to a deadline. But if we could have that information in the first meeting of March, we could still meet that deadline.
Well, my thought is, I don't have enough information to answer all the questions that you want, because I haven't even actually identified a project. And that's why I wanted to bring it to the board to see if there was any interest in writing this grant for a project, and then what project do you think would be appropriate? Then I can answer the rest of your question. Yeah,
So my question would be, you were just referring to the Paonian motion study, is that right?
yeah, I thought maybe take a piece out of that.
And I guess I haven't, the study has not been finalized to
No,
this point.
but we've had lots of pieces.
So, do we need to wait till it's finalized to create
Oh,
a
no.
list?
We can look at some of the stuff and decide what we want to do out of that anyway.
With the application deadline being March 15th, I would have, it would have been much easier to have a educated response if I knew what you were thinking. I've not reviewed the various iterations of Paonian motion to know. And so could you say again what you think could be
Well,
applied for?
Yeah, there are a couple of things that they have proposed. One of them is moving, expanding the skate park where it is, and then putting a dog park in. And then they proposed doing a walking path around that end of the park with possible, a lighted walking path and with possible art installations. We have those sculptures from, I forget his name, but a famous artist has given us sculptures that might be installed on that walking path again. They also proposed taking down the chain link fence on the side of the football field and putting parking in that way and a different access to the park that way too. This might be something that might fall within that grant as well.
So it looks like the fact that 76% of those grants are usually under
They have to
15,000.
be
So
pretty small.
you have to, so maybe putting up a sculpture is within reason.
Or maybe, getting somebody to design the walking path. I mean, that would be another
So they would pay,
possibility.
so they will pay for design. It doesn't have to be a tangible.
It doesn't, then most likely fund, they are better to fund something that is tangible so they can put their name on it, just
Right.
like everybody.
Well,
I can do more investigation and I can come back with other ideas, yes.
Well, being a frequent user of Apple Valley Park, I would say that there's some major drainage problems in Apple Valley Park that have to be solved on the south side of the tennis courts. Very last exercise station, consistently flooded. The walking path definitely needs to be rehabbed. It's in bad shape. There's so much use of the exercise stations that they're divided. And so a grant that would rehab and renew the walking path and would take care of the drainage problems. And that's probably $8,000 or $10,000 right there. But that would enhance the users for Apple Valley Park. There's not good ways to get around Apple Valley Park without getting muddy. And that's the problem.
Okay.
And so instead of these, and then I do like the idea of doing something moving toward the skate park. So getting rid of fencing near the skate park would be built or something like that, I think would be beneficial. I think that there's a lot of community support for the skate park and starting to show some movement in that direction would also be good. So those are two possible projects.
Well, and I can go ahead and investigate those things, see what the approximate cost would be, and come back to you with a proposal.
I'm afraid you may run out of time.
Well, I can email you the proposal, and at one of our special meetings, maybe we could stick it at the end.
Okay.
Well, we do have a special meeting next week.
Right, we do on
Okay.
Monday. So if I could get you stuff, yes, Mr. Thompson.
Do you think there'd be room to combine some of these ideas and have a park-wide approach, or does it need to be a very specific?
I think with the amounts of money they give us, it's gonna have to be fairly small. If we could write for $70,000 or $50,000, then yeah, it would be different, but not for 15.
The other suggestion I would say is, we recently passed or moving towards the dark skies work, and there might be opportunity to use funding to hit the town parks in compliance with the dark skies initiative.
Okay. Well, if with the board's permission, then I will go ahead and investigate some of these things and bring them back.
Would you like a motion to that effect?
I don't,
I think that you need the other, yeah. we probably
okay, if you
do.
want, yeah.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we request that the mayor provide us with information about possible AARP community challenge grants and the costs, what the intent of the grant would do, and what resources would be required of the town for dollars and staff time. Thank you.
All right, do I hear a second?
Second,
Further board discussion? Okay, seeing none, anything from the public? Yes, Ms. Watson.
Dan Watson. So it would be nice to hear this in a public meeting. I felt uncomfortable with the amount of emailing that could be going on that we're not privy to, because I really would like to hear the process. And I do support Trustee Knudsen's comments about Apple Valley, working on something that we already have to improve it. And I'm uncomfortable with, before we've approved the study, to start chopping up the town part. It makes me nervous. I want to see the big picture of the plan first. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Ms. Patterson.
Patterson, Rio Grande. Is it ever possible that we just not do anything? Like we just leave a park green with grass? Isn't that possible? Do we always have to try improving things like we tried improving Willis Park and look where we're at now? The shade, the green, it's cement and statues and all kinds of things. Can we just leave things alone? What's this chase after free money? What is it all the time? Mary? For design work, design this, design that. That's a lot of money for design. And it just sounds like somebody's putting it in their pockets. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, seeing none, is the board ready to vote on approving that the mayor look into improvements at Apple Valley Skate Park and or fencing removal? All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, let's move on to staff reports, town administrator's report. Ms. Ferguson.
Yes, first apologies that there wasn't a written report included in the packet. I do have a few updates to provide to the board. The ORC RFP was reviewed by one of the engineering firms and has been published on the town website under bids and RFPs. It has also been published and is available to community members to review through the Muni Docs under agreements and applications, RFPs, and it's included in Muni Docs. It's also going to CML and the state Colorado Rural Water Association as well as national. So it will be throughout all rural water associations in the United States, as well as I've had a few other places suggested to send it to, so we'll be going there as well. The information so that the board is aware now and for the public is that the submittal deadline is March 21st, 2022. And included in the RFP is a calendar of the process as far as opportunity for anyone interested to ask questions, an opportunity, of course, for when they're submitted for a bid opening, that they be sealed, how they be provided in a sealed envelope. The opening would be public. The board at that point, I would assume, follow similar strategies has been done for interviewing for town attorney and schedule interviews and go through that process. So those are things we're gonna have to start thinking about as we move forward. But that is available and can be viewed. The chief recruitment flyer is actually being created right now. I had a call today from Chris Lowe with GPS, and he states that the flyer should be done this week and published by end of week. So they're very excited to get that all put together. Thank you to Tammy for providing some great photos for the flyer. And also thank you to Dave and Tammy for assisting with some of the verbiage included in the brochure. Received the preliminary information on the vault inspection from Pipestone, John Tedder. He sent over information about each vault and he's still compiling the cost projection and expects to have that this week. That's also been communicated to SGM Engineering and JDS Hydro. Water data is being collected and is being entered into Fulcrum. I have spoken with Josh on that, and I'm still looking into learning that system, how to access and get that data. The data isn't provided the same way as it was provided when Travis was giving me the data. And that's why that spreadsheet hasn't been given, because I don't have just those numbers the way he gave them to me. But the information I have received is that the tank is folding, and I believe that they're here and can answer to that as well when we get to those items. If the board would like a little bit more information on that. In an effort to support the town and the board, SGM and JDS Hydro and I have spoken, and they are working to provide a collaborative list to the board that would basically be a collab between JDS Hydro and SGM, where they would be bringing to the board willing to support that includes things beyond staffing and operations. So they would include items such as design of capital improvements, assisting with the drafting of construction standards, assisting in development of standard operating procedures, and other tasks. So I have just a draft there finalizing that, and I expect to have that within probably tomorrow and out to the board. So you'll have that, and then we can include that as an agenda item and in a packet, in the next packet. Let's see, I have so many things here. I wanted the board to be aware that the issue that you were informed, oh, sorry, that's my Spanish copy. I have it in both languages. The issue that you were notified about, that we didn't meet a monthly monitoring requirement. That letter is a tier 2 notice, so it's required to go out within 30 days. We went ahead and got that worked out with CDPHE on the language that needs to be included in the public notice. They've been printed and will start going out. And they actually, a large amount of them started going out in the mail today. So people in their residences will start receiving those notices. And I think that is all I have at the moment.
Okay, questions for the town administrator from the board? Yes, Ms. Nick.
Everybody has been talking about the Monday, February 28th work session special meeting, and I just wanted to find out if we are indeed going to be able to have that.
Yes, we are. Yes, Brandon Bear with SGM will be present at the meeting to provide on the wall and through our system to show. Hopefully we'll have this figured out by then so that people on the Zoom can see you. Right now they can't. And people on the YouTube don't have audio. So we're between the two, we are perfect. But we're still working out those kind of little issues. But he will be here in person to present the system mapping and go over the capital improvement plan and asset inventory report that he provided, so that the board can make the decision at that point on whether or not to accept that as the final, so we can start moving toward closing out that grant and implementing that data as needed.
Yes, Mr.
I just wonder how long you think that may take.
His presentation.
His presentation. I'm a little concerned about us having enough time to talk about some more of the water system contracting staff as it was in the motion. So I'm just curious if you feel like, do you have any idea how long of a presentation?
His presentation isn't going to be, it shouldn't be that long. He didn't anticipate more than maybe an hour, but we allotted 3 hours to allow for a Q&A. So I think that we should be able to entertain all the business that night.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else from the board? Yes, Mr. Hicks.
At the risk of being very inflammatory, one thing that's very embarrassing for an expert when they come to Paonia and they try to deliver expert opinions to the board, they are grilled by our public. And I'm wondering if there's a better process so that questions can be forwarded to the mayor and the mayor asks the question. But I've heard from more than one expert that it is very awkward for a person to stand in front here and try to give a report based on their expertise that we are supposed to decide on, and then have the public stand next to them and grill them with questions. And I think it's important that there's a degree of respect to the expertise as they stand in front of us. And I'd like to find a better process for the public to be able to ask questions. But it is very off-putting because it tends to get the expert ground into the politics of where we are. We as a board have to handle the politics and our relationships with the public. So I just wanted to make that comment because that's going to be happening on Monday. And I'm concerned about how it will come across with people that are giving expert testimony.
I did hear that as well from a few people that have come to meetings, even people presenting who might not necessarily be an expert, but instead of questions and answers being addressed to the board, they felt very unprepared to have back and forth conversation with community members in the meeting. But I would think that how the board wants to address that in their presentations in the meeting would absolutely be led by the board, a board decision, and that potentially the discussion about the procedure is a really good time to take that part into consideration.
Can I make a motion to that effect, Madam Mayor?
Sure.
I'd like to make a motion that our special meeting on Monday be organized in such a way that the public are invited to submit questions in writing during the meeting. And these questions are forwarded to the mayor to ask the expert.
Okay. So we have a motion that on the special meeting in Monday, it be organized to have citizens be invited and to submit questions to the mayor to ask the presenter. Is that correct? All right.
I think I would word it, citizens are invited to submit written questions to the mayor at a time during the meeting. And then the mayor will ask those questions to the expert.
Okay. Do I have a second on that motion? Second. All right, discussion by the board.
So I'm as a oftentimes community member that would have been questions, tell me exactly how are you going to receive those questions? Are you going to ask that people, are you going to have paper on the back table and have people put questions in a box on the back table during the presentation, and then that all of that would be brought forward at a certain time in the presentation? I'm just thinking about the logistics of this.
Yeah, those are really good questions. I think it's really important to put that up in advance. So there would be forms in the back that people could take and pens that they could write their questions as the meeting's going on. And then after we've had the board discussion, then the public would be asked to bring their questions forward to the mayor at that time.
In mass?
Yeah, or we could collect them either way. But, you know, they don't, an individual doesn't come up and say, this is my question.
Right.
We take the sheets of paper and the mayor can look at those and say, well, these questions are similar, so I'm going to ask this series. And then these questions are similar, but it will also winnow it down to here's the topic that the questions are about. So I was thinking about doing it that way. So, you know, sometimes that's facilitation wise, it makes it easier on the person that's trying to do the expert testimony. But it also disciplines us to a degree, so we don't get into the politics quite so much between the expert and the public.
Mostly it's the logistics. I would think you'd want a place for them to put their questions in the back,
There could be,
you know, instead of a bunch of people moving up here.
Sure.
So of course, nobody can have a question ready before.
No.
So this will have to be questions being written on the fly.
Right.
And then everybody puts them in the back and then they are asked from here. All right. Just trying to get the logistics.
Yeah, one thing that's a benefit for the public, like with any of our packets, they can read the presentation and the packet in advance. So they could even submit their questions in advance. That would be fine.
Do you anticipate that kind of that Brandon would be providing much in writing ahead of the meeting other than the report?
It would, I believe it would just be the report.
Yep. So it's a matter of sitting in the audience, listening and writing the questions.
Right.
Well, I'm willing to try this. This could be a test case, everybody.
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Thompson.
My question is in regards to the contracts that we have with these consultants and how this meeting time is built into the contract. And I assume we have a fixed amount of money that we can spend with the consultants, and how much of their time is being spent in dialogue versus doing what's actually written in the contract. Or do we have in the deliverables of the contract public meetings and that kind of situation?
Ms. Ferguson.
We do in this one, yes. Coming and doing a presentation is one of the deliverables.
And how much of that kind of time do we have roughly? I mean,
I don't recall. I'd have to go back and look at the original scope.
My concern in our last meeting with the folks was just like, they were being asked, and I think this is what you're getting at a little bit, Dave, is they're being asked to do things that really weren't as part of the contract. That makes me a little uncomfortable.
Okay, other comments from the board? Yes, Ms. Mary.
I guess I just want clarification. Does this replace public comment, or would there be a public comment time? Would there be a public comment allowed with a narrow scope that focuses on the projects as opposed to staff or the board?
This is a work session.
Pardon?
This is a work session.
This is not a work session, it's a special meeting, correct?
It's both.
It's both.
Oh, that's right, correct.
So would there be, I just want to make sure we're not saying, you can submit your questions, but you can't state anything. Is that?
That's a really good question, Trustee Mack. It's really important that we hear concerns that the public might have. I think we have to deal with that. I think the thing I'm trying to get after is that our consultants don't have to deal with that. We have to deal with that. So maybe I don't know how that would happen during that meeting. I'm really trying to temper it in a way that the people that are the experts that are trying to guide us and where we're trying to go have a chance to really go deep with us as a board. And that if we might be missing something, the public has a chance to ask questions to enhance that. And then maybe we close the meeting with public comment. I think that's what you're getting after, some kind of public comment allowed in that. I know you're sensitive to that.
That sounds good.
So then public comment, kind of like we do a hearing at the very end of the meeting, we get a public comment.
Something along those lines, yes.
Okay. But to expect the expert to answer the public comment, that's what I'm trying to get away from.
Great.
Okay. Yeah.
What I want to clarify is that you're referring to when Brandon is presenting the report in what I'm assuming is the work session.
Yes.
Which we get questions, we get them answered, and then at some point, we are going to convert to a meeting.
Correct.
Where action can be taken. And I'm assuming that you're not proposing any change.
No.
So I just want to clarify that, because I think you've been using the word meeting.
Yeah.
And I want to clarify that it would not change how the meeting portion of that
Right.
February 28th evening would go. It's just for the presentation purpose. Okay.
Okay, any other comments or questions from the board? Okay, anything from the public? Yes, Mr. Knut. I'm sorry. Sorry.
They look a lot.
Yeah, they look so much alike.
Those white guys are all the same.
So Thomas Markle, 232 I applaud you guys trying something new. I think that's definitely laudable. My concern with the arrangement that you're proposing is that it provides an opportunity for the mayor to censor the questions or alter them. So in recognition of that, I would ask that at a minimum, you offer all the questions that were submitted for public inspection at the end of the meeting or at some point in the future, so that we can see whether the questions are edited, and if so, how.
That's fair.
Thank you.
Yes, yes, Ms. Watson.
First of all, could you reiterate the day and the time of the meeting? Not just Monday, but the date.
It's the 28th of February.
28th February. And what time is it?
5:30.
5:30. Okay. And then, so I'm assuming this is the long anticipated presentation from SGM. At one time, they talked about reserving the Paradise Theater. Is this the same presentation that we're talking about?
Correct.
Okay, and then, I guess there was some sort of an intent, or we kind of have an anticipation of the information that's gonna be presented, don't we? Or is it just gonna be, we're all waiting with bated breath?
Well, we will have the report prior to that.
Okay, and then I just wanted to say, during the last meeting, I don't know what you're alluding, what trustee Knudsen is alluding to, but during the disbursements, when I asked about the lead and copper, I was presenting this to the board, and I was assuming, I didn't know that Brandon was gonna be at the meeting, and I certainly didn't expect him to come up here and answer a question, my question that occurred during the disbursements. I thought that's something you could have just gotten from the staff. So I hope you weren't talking about my lead copper.
No.
Okay, okay. Great, well, I'm excited to hear what this presentation is going to be about. We've been waiting for it for a long time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Yes, Ms. Patterson.
Thank you for bringing and having the special meeting. And also maybe if we wanted to submit questions beforehand, we could just submit to other trustees, if that would work. Thanks.
Mr. Brick.
Yeah, in a perfect world, our experts would have unbiased opinions, and I certainly have no reason to suspect that the SGM report will be biased in any way. But sometimes the things that experts say and the way they say them, what they don't say, carry a bias. And I think that's one reason that it's important to have questions from the public. And given that the mayor is not immune from a viewpoint, I just want to reiterate, I hope she'll be very faithful in her duty to present all sides of issues and not censor questions or take them.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Any other board discussion? Okay, let me see your notes. Okay.
Good luck.
Oh my goodness.
I know.
Which one is it? Okay. We have a motion on the board that the special meeting on Monday with SGM, that the citizens will write their questions and submit them to the mayor, who will then ask the questions to the expert. Yes.
Could you please, instead of special meeting, say work session?
Oh, I can do that. Or just the meeting. We'll just say the meeting.
Just so it's the work session. It's the work session, just,
Yeah,
I think it's, yeah, it
Okay.
needs to be work session, because then we are not, we don't have the ability to make motions.
Okay, so we have a motion before the board that at the work session on Monday, the citizens will. February 28th. The citizens will write their questions and present them to the mayor, who will then ask the questions of the expert. Are we ready to vote? Okay, all in favor? All opposed? All right, that motion passes.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for the town administrator?
Was the mayor's report?
I'm sorry, what?
Oh, no, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, Ms. Butler.
Was there another item that was going to be discussed ahead of the presentation and we were going to meet at 5 o'clock?
Oh, that will be
5:30?
discussed later in the agenda.
Okay.
All right. Okay, any questions for the town administrator from the public? Yes, Mr. Markle. Got it right this time.
I was wondering what the nature is of the tier 2 CDPHE notice that's going on. I haven't received mine.
They went out today. They are the notice in response to the information that was provided to the board at the last meeting about a failure to monitor or report. Let me see here. There was no data available in December for chlorine or turbidity, and so we have a few days where there was no information provided. And so that's what the notice is to make the community aware of that.
Were the tests done and it's not provided, or were they not done? Was there ever any danger to the public?
My understanding is that, no, there's no danger to the public, but let's see. It says there were no readings collected for 2 timeframes on January 1st for turbidity or chlorine and on January 17th.
Or past this, suppose. Okay, thank you.
All right, anything else from the public? All right, seeing none, let's move on to Public Works report. Ms. Ferguson.
We're working. Public Works, sorry. I do applaud the willingness for our Public Works employees to continue their efforts. They've done a really good job in the absence of a on-the-ground director. So I am pleased to report to the board that a probationary period hire for the Public Works position has been provided. The individual's name is Corey Heiniger. He has extensive crew chief experience and project management experience working in the mines and different safety aspects. He also comes with a lot of experience in using data software, Excel, SCADA systems and such. So I think he's going to be quite an asset. He knows that this is a probationary period because it is a very important director position for the town. Today was his first day and he came in with a gusto and has already hit the ground running and making good strides. I can tell you that his process was a 3-part process, which included spending time with Dennis Rich, who's been acting as kind of our, I don't want to say our crew chief, but our leader, our on the ground person. He spent over an hour with Dennis and they went over different aspects of the job that Dennis knows firsthand, coming up on his 27th year working for the town. And Dennis came back and also provided good reviews and said he seemed like he would be excellent from someone who has had a lot of experience with different directors and knows a lot about what needs to happen. So I'm hopeful and excited that this will be a good fit for the town. Other than that, they have been working steadily with the removing snow when we have some snow, doing clearing. They have done an amazing cleanup job at the sewer treatment plant. I know we've seen some big bills on that. I'm anticipating the final release report from CDPHE on that order to get that cleanup done. He's coming out to do his last inspection and then we'll send over that letter. They've been really hard at work, have done anything and everything that we've asked, gone above and beyond anything that I've asked them to do. And so again, kudos to them. And that's all I have unless anyone has any questions specific to Public Works.
All right, questions specific to Public Works? Yes.
I always have a question. I just wondered when you go back out and sweep up the sand that's been put down for ice removal, just because downtown it's pretty thick.
Yes.
So I wondered when that might be happening.
So they were talking about that last week and then the news came of the impending storm and they decided to wait to see what happens over the next couple of nights. Because they go and they sweep and they clean up and pile, and then as soon as it snows, they go back out and re-drop. Now, we don't want layers and layers, so they are going to go out and do a clean as soon as we get past the snow. But that's why they haven't done one yet.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions from the board specific to Public Works?
Can you just remind me of the fellow's name who's in the probationary position?
Corey Heiniger.
All right, anything else from the board? All right, yes.
How long is the probationary period?
6 months is standard. It could be longer, it could be shortened if things are amazing.
Okay. Anything else from the board? All right, seeing none. Yes, Ms. Peck.
Thank you. So is Corey the brother of Caden Heidegger?
Corey is Caden's father.
Father, okay. And Caden is the police officer.
When we get to the police report, I will let
Okay.
the board know that he is not a police officer with the town of Paonia as of tomorrow.
Okay, yes, Ms. White.
I just wanted to ask as we move forward here, I know it's been challenging without anybody in the supervisory position for public works, but I'd like to know if we can work on helping the employees kind of develop a sense of environmental stewardship. You've been talking about snow and ice removal, but what I noticed on my corner is they dumped snow melt over the storm drain, that blue snow melt. I know they were trying to do their job, they were trying to get rid of that ice, but this is all they knew how to do is take out their bars and dump blue snow melt on it. And the thing that really upset me is some of it got shoveled onto my plants. And snow melt is salt and it kills the soil. So I went with my shop vac and I tried to get it all out. I saw some of the guys out there sweeping the sand over those valves that were replaced in my street, and I just pointed that out to them. But I want to feel safe, that I know that there's an ethic down, you know, with the department head, whoever's managing them, to avoid these scenarios, because putting salt in the storm drain, that ends up in the river. And ultimately, I don't think that's the best way to take care of ice. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Anyone else from the public? Yes, Mr. Burke.
Apologize for taking up more time, but thanks to Mr. Rich and the other fellow that's on the town work crew. It's very nice, but I think that they deserve and should be offered at least some sort of a bonus for the stress they've gone through over the last weeks. And a raise would be nice too.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Burke.
I can't, I'll let the board know that Public Works crews did receive their raise last pay period. And Mr. Rich did receive a bonus in the last disbursements as well. And other crew members and such are being, that is always a consideration, as something that we are looking to do. I know we've talked about that for a couple of years, about moving away from just salary and when it comes to support to the employees and the staff. And I find that I've always thought that bonuses and recognition for a job well done, even if it's nominal, is a good incentive and makes that employee feel valued and recognized and appreciated. And so that is something that we're doing.
Thank you. All right, anything else from the public? All right, let's move on to the police report.
We still have a police department. We have reissued the ads. I have 2 individuals who've stated that they're interested in the position, one who's been in law enforcement, one that's newer to law enforcement, but I haven't received applications yet for those 2 positions. So we will still have Investigator Haynard and Officer Kramer, but today is Officer Heineger's last day with the town. I've gathered all of the extra interviews and have all the information that is that the employees have stated they were willing to have public together. I just need to put it into a written form. I anticipated to have that to the board at this meeting, but that didn't happen. So I will have that for you at the next meeting. But I can tell you that Officer Heineger is not leaving because he's not happy with the police department or the staffing at town level. That's not, those are not his concerns.
Thank you. Any questions for the town administrator on the police report? Okay, seeing none, anything from the public? Yes, Mr. Mark.
I read in the Delta County Independent that we had paid for Caden's post-training.
We did. There's a contract agreement, and part of that contract agreement is a certain amount of time that he has to reimburse.
Okay, so town will be reimbursed by him directly, or by Hotchkiss?
No, it will be reimbursed directly from Officer Heineger.
Okay, and he did go to Hotchkiss to work for your husband?
Yes, he did.
Okay, cool.
All right.
My husband's stealing everything.
Anything else from the public? All right, seeing none, let's move on to the treasurer's report. Once more.
So this is fun doing it, adhering to that resolution on the back. So we don't have a specific treasurer's report, as we still don't have a treasurer. Of course, as the board knows, it's a voluntary community program that actually we didn't have one prior to 2016. I believe we didn't. The finance officer operated in, or director operated in that capacity until such a time as former trustee King left the board and then came and was appointed to the position of treasurer with the town. He's the only one we've had for quite some time that I'm aware of. So again, we'll have to, at some point here soon, need to bring that topic back to the board and have a discussion about whether or not we want to look at other options for the treasurer and some of the other things that have been discussed before about reinstating some form of the ad hoc finance committee or treasurer and appointing the finance director to provide those specific duties that are required under statute, which is what's currently happening. So we'll need to bring that back soon to the board.
Any questions for the town administrator on the treasurer's report?
Yes, just to be clear, does the treasurer's report constitute the information from Cindy on the audit?
Yes.
Yes, it's in there. Mhm.
Okay, then I have a question.
Yes.
I just wasn't sure where things stop and start. On page 25, where you've provided the how you rectified the deficiencies identified by the auditor, I just want to clarify that on page 25, the first red font update, these corrections will continue with the 2022 audit, correct?
No,
Or 2021 audit.
It's the 2021 audit because they're auditing our finances and our books from 2021
Okay.
in 2022.
Thank you. And I had another question and for that clarification. And, you know, I guess one of the other things is there was a requirement to do some classes. So I just wanted to find out were those online classes that you had to take by December?
This is actually what was in the audit. The auditor suggested some training, but they weren't a requirement and there weren't online classes. We have requested from the auditor information on where those classes and other training could be provided. And other than some hands-on direction specific given directly to Cindy, that information has not been provided by the auditor.
Yeah, will we be using the same auditor?
Yes, it is.
Around, okay, so a lot of this can be addressed with the same, I don't know if you have the same physical person, but it's the same company?
Yes, it's the same company and we anticipate it'll be the same person.
Okay, so there'll be a follow-up by them.
Yes,
To assure that these things are taken care of, clarified.
correct.
Anything else from the board? All right, seeing none, anything from the public? All right, seeing none, 11. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, Mr. Marco.
Just so there is this,
Please come to the podium so that,
I apologize, I'm a little lost. Is this regarding the, curing the deficiencies?
Right.
Okay.
right,
I had a question. Well, in general, I kind of feel like these deficiencies, the cures for the deficiencies, I suppose, I'm not sure exactly what the correct term is, but I feel like this should be coming from a third party rather than from the staff. If we could have a update from the auditor or from some third party authority to indicate that these cures are in place, and specifically the final. I'm not sure exactly how they're all broken down, but they state that management is responsible for establishing and maintaining effective internal controls, with generally accounting principles, and it seemed like what they're saying is that we need courses. I was wondering if there were any details about what's being did.
So I can answer. So first, we have requested in a written report from the auditor stating that the deficiencies have been cured. Standard process for audit is that they evaluate those recommendations and deficiencies at the next audit. So I can't guarantee that that report would be provided prior to them coming and auditing and receiving all of the data for 2021 to confirm that those things have been taken care of. And as far as the training, that was direct in response to what I just answered for Trustee Smith, that the training was a suggestion, or a recommendation, not a requirement or deficiency note. And that Cindy has worked with the auditors directly on some of these tasks and to confirm that the information they thought she could get from the trainings, she has. And has not been provided any direct information about where a formal training to address these issues are being provided to date.
Okay, thank you. All right. Anything else from the public?
Thank you.
All right, seeing none, let's move on to the JDS Hydro interim report. So the report was included in the packet along with recommendations for the water system and where we should be. The recommendation is to the order of what we should be doing on our system. It looks like we're working on the PBR valve maintenance and the landlord plant and bringing the cloud treatment plant online and also working on those SOPs. What about the leak detection contractor? Have we done anything on that, Ms. Ferguson?
Other than starting to look into contractors and firms that offer, we have not deep dived into that. I was looking because James Plumstarns from JDS Hydro was on our Zoom, but he said that it was a little touch and go whether or not he would be available, and unfortunately he's had to log out. So he knew that that this was under the reports just to provide to the public. But we can, if the board wishes to have a conversation about this, again, just generalized conversation now, I do anticipate having this as an agenda item at the next meeting along with the SGM JDS Hydro collaboration. And he would be available also at that meeting to answer questions and present any information to the board.
So would the board like to postpone this to the next agenda when we will have the JDS Hydro representative here? Yes, Ms. Smith?
And are you, when you're referring to the combination of JDS and SGM, are you saying a regular trustee meeting or another special meeting?
At the regular trustee meeting.
Would that be acceptable to the board? Would you like to make a motion that we postpone this to the next board meeting?
Would that be to continue it or to continue this?
Yeah, continue or postpone, either of those languages.
Okay, I move that we continue the discussion of the JDS progress report and data collection interim recommendations to the March 10th board meeting, when a JDS consultant will be on hand to answer questions and explain the report.
Okay, do I have a second on that?
Second.
Any other further discussion from the board? All right, seeing none, anything from the public? Yes, Mr. Markle?
I was hoping to be able to discuss this tonight. I feel like it's very timely and speaks to a lot of issues that we've had in the water committee, but if it's expedient to speak about it next week, I ask your permission to discuss this agenda item on the water committee, discussion. Okay, thank you.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to postpone or continue this JDS Hydro report on data collection and interim recommendations until the March 10th meeting when the JDS Hydro representative will be here. Is the board ready to vote? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion carries. All right, let's move on to the annual subscription to Archive Social.
So this is continued from the last meeting. This is it was brought up at 2 meetings ago by a trustee about the cost to continue to be a member of Archive Social, which is approximately $3,000 a year. And the discussion was the pros and cons of retaining that membership in conjunction with the Town of Paonia Facebook page. Town of Paonia Facebook page is utilized, it tends to be in a series, and then there's not a lot of utilization, but we use the Town of Paonia page to push out information to the community, especially when there's quick information that's and that we want to get out en masse. That is one of the options that we use. It's not necessarily used by the community for correspondence or for posting questions or asking questions to staff. Those conversations tend to happen more on the message boards that are not being collected through Archive Social, which is why we don't comment on them. So the way Archive Social works is any post, comment, deleted comment, edit of a comment that is done on the Town of Paonia Facebook page is archived. You have a running record of those conversations, the posts, the comments. If someone goes on and makes a comment and edits it, if I go and make a post and then I edit it to add information, it tracks from the original and every edit, date and timestamp, so that that information could be collected and provided should it become necessary for any reason, Cora included. So like I said, there's lulls where it's not utilized much at all, and there's other times when it's a heavily utilized item to push out information. And so I leave it at the discretion of the board whether to continue with Archive Social or to discontinue. If we discontinue using, it is my recommendation that we shut down the Town of Paonia Facebook page, or there's just no way then, other than doing a post, I don't think it would be anywhere that we would be able to do any back and forth or answering of questions or anything like that, because it isn't correctly archived.
Well, discussion from the board on this? Yes, Mr. Knudsen.
It seems that there's so little traffic on the Paonia thing, and I'm wondering how many Cora requests have ever been. We go to the Facebook page to try to get data for that. I think that emails, the board minutes, any documentation, that's what Cora requests really come for, not for Facebook page. So I don't think we need to, as I listen to this, I don't think it's worth the $3,000 to do this, but I don't think we should tear down the Facebook page. I think we should keep it up and use it for the notification and the push out. But I can't see spending $3,000 for archiving it, because, and I'd like to hear from the public on this too, because if the public feels that that's a critical piece of information for Cora requests, then we can consider it. So.
Okay, other? Yes, Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, I agree with Trustee Knudsen. It doesn't seem like we're really utilizing it very much at all, but I think I would like to hear from the public and see what their thoughts on this would be.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Ms. Smith.
I just have a question that I know that the town's Facebook page has been used extensively to let water users know that we have a water leak. So if you were to take the Facebook page down, what's your alternative for letting people know? And I know there's Code Red. I just don't know, I haven't seen it pushed by the town. Is that a reasonable alternative to try to get? So what are your ideas for how you would get information out in the absence of a town Facebook page?
So the Code Red was one we just used just a couple of weeks ago. We did do that when they were doing a repair, and we weren't sure to what extent it was going to affect all the users on the water. We can use Code Red for a lot of things, but part of the problem that we run into with that is that if it's very if it's not isolated or affecting everyone, it can be difficult to narrow down who receives that call. So that's the issue. It's actually pretty easy to utilize. I provide the text to dispatch and emergency management services in Delta. They put it out and get the call, and then the resolution call, that's the follow-up. And that's a call or an email or a text message. There's multiple options you can choose when you register for Code Red on the deltacounty.com website. So we could utilize that more, and with some of our, specific to water, some of our mapping and things we've done has helped some, but some of the issues that we have are water lines that have other lines that go off a different direction, and it's one or two houses that are off of this odd little connection that you don't realize, and we do our best to not miss those individuals and those aren't all mapped on they're not numbered Waterline 1, and this is everyone that's on at Waterline 2, things like that. So that's, I think, part of the building of the process with the mapping of the lines. You can always do code red and send it out to everyone, and in the code red, give the specific area that we anticipate there to be issues, and if you're outside of that area and experience issues, you can notify the town and let us know. That could be helpful. We would still, when we know it's a specific water company and things like that, we notify the company, we try to notify the company representatives so that they can notify the people on their water line. We heavily provide PSAs to KBNF now to almost anything that's going on, they get a notice of that so that they're aware of it. I send it to the DCI, they sometimes are able to throw it up on their Facebook page that they have and their social media presence. Those are the other ways that we do it now.
Yes.
Just one last question on Code Red. Is Code Red only as good as people signing up for it?
Yes.
So it needs to be advertised more if
Yes.
it should just be used, because so many people don't look at Facebook.
Yes, and I want to do some kind of posting as well at town hall to let people know that if people that don't have, so the only way to register is on a computer. It's not the only way to get your notice, but it's the only way to sign up to get notified through Code Red. So what we have done for individuals that have come in and that topic has been brought up, we've registered them in town hall. And so and that's something that I'm happy to continue to offer for people that are on our water system and sewer system and live in our community that want to be a member of Code Red to come in, and we'll assist them with the registering so that they can get those phone calls, landline phone calls, text messages, emails. There's multiple ways you can receive the notice.
Okay, yes, Ms. Bennett.
Just to be clear, this doesn't affect in any way the town website.
No.
So stuff that we post on there is.
Yes, and we do Code Red on, when we do a Code Red or an alert, we do an alert message on the web, on our town website as well.
Anything else from the trustees? Yes, Ms. New.
So when I first realized that this could help with complying with core requests, I did do a pretty deep search as I could on the internet, and just found virtually nothing involving public records requests and Facebook and lawsuits. There was just nothing. I certainly wasn't aware that this would be useful in complying with core requests, but I don't think so. Facebook just arbitrarily erases history. So things posted by the town, unless the town is erasing them, they will be there. So and to drop Facebook altogether, it's the only social media platform the town uses. To drop it altogether when we're trying to use transparency, I think would be a big mistake, even though it isn't utilized a lot. But spending $3,000 a year to get a shot of everything, when really the history of what the town has posted is probably the only thing that's ever going to be called into question. I would be in favor of dropping the archive social and retaining the Facebook page.
Yes, Ms. First.
I would just say that I don't have an objection to that either. I would just want to make it clear to the board, and we can also do a pinned post or something on Facebook that with that removal, there wouldn't necessarily be a response in comments below, that any questions that are asked that require a response would either be an updated post or an edit in the original post without deleting anything. It would just be an edit time, similar to what I've done on some of them that you've seen, whether you saw them on Facebook or when I sent them. There's the original post. And then when I've edited, I put that it's an edit, the date and the time of the edit, and put additional information so that it's running that way, but there's no dialogue below. Because while I wouldn't delete dialogue below that I've provided, other people that have posted can. And so then you don't have that conversation tracking. So it would just be in the post. That would be the only thing we would use, just posting it for information.
All right, anything else from the board? All right, seeing none from the public? Yes, Ms. Rude.
So I'm certainly not opposed to putting information out to however people want to receive it. Not personally, not being a Facebook user, I looked at the town's Facebook page this afternoon, and again, I'm not a user, so maybe I misunderstood it, but it looked like I had to log on to participate in the comments that are going on there. And I object to that. That's a barrier to participation in a public governmental setting. And my suggestion would be that the Facebook page might provide notices and then direct any of the commenting traffic to the town website, where it's available without the barrier of membership in Facebook, which a lot of people think is a questionable step to take with your life. So that's my comment.
Okay, yeah.
So it seems like Facebook has a self sort of search to it. So I'm not sure why anybody would do a Quora through the town when they can just search the day or the items through Facebook, do their own search. There's 2,500 people on the town of Paonia Facebook page. And a lot of people help each other, a lot of shares, you know, when the water stuff comes up, a lot of people help each other by saying, open a faucet when the water comes back. So there's a lot of good information on here. I wouldn't get rid of it. I would get rid of, it sounds like that $3,000 a year is just sort of pointless. And if you can just keep it going at a minimal, you know, clip and just put the most important stuff on there, I would say keep it. But
thank you. Yes, Ms. White.
So I'm not a fan of Facebook either. I'm not a member. And I share a similar feeling with Mr. Bruner about this forum that's basically unavailable to the public unless you're a member of this private organization that collects all sorts of personal information about you. But that being said, so I don't know, you know, we have Paonia message board, we have so can those conversations happen in that context and leave the town Facebook site just for posting? I'm not sure we need to be accepting dialogue onto it. But that being said, I do believe there's some greater issues around Facebook, like, so so it's kind of safe not to overuse it because you start getting to issues like who's doing the posting, how accurate is the information, you need an information control committee, that kind of stuff. So it's good to keep it simple. But I'm just curious, are there any legal obligations, you know, attorney-wise, that we take on when we do actually have a social media account? I'm not speaking in favor of this service, but I'm just wondering, is there an obligation that we have to be aware of, that we have to fulfill, or does the Facebook archiving satisfy any legal obligations that we have as a town to maintaining a social media platform? And that might be a lawyer's question.
Right.
I'm not sure I could answer
Yeah,
that.
I don't think any of us can answer it. I don't think.
Okay.
All right. Anything else from the public? All right. Can we get a motion on this? All right, a motion to, okay, you want to give it a shot, Tammy, or shall I frame it?
Yeah, go ahead. Fran.
Okay, that we cancel Archive Social, but keep the town's Facebook page.
Okay, that would be my motion. I would make a motion that we cancel the Archive Social annual membership. Thank you. And keep the Facebook page. I would add, I don't know if this needs to be part of the motion, but that Administrator Ferguson or whoever is managing the Facebook page would do the exercises that you said, or the make the statements on there that you said that would help people understand that this isn't a place for public dialogue, if I understand it.
So we can just cut the motion off at, but keep the town's Facebook page. Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. All right. Can I have a second on that? Okay. All right. Further discussion from the board? All right. Are we ready to vote? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes.
I'm sorry, this came from the tree board. The tree board requests that its Facebook page be dropped, that nothing happens there. Chair Paula Martin said over the last 4 years, only one member has expressed an interest in keeping it. So would it be okay to delete the tree board Facebook page? They have a website and it's linked on the town
That's perfect.
Yeah, sure.
website.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So it is 8:03. Would the board like to take a short break?
Yes.
All right, then would somebody move for a 5 to 10 minute recess?
I'm moving that we take a 5-minute recess.
Do I have a second?
Can we have a 10-minute recess?
10 minutes.
Okay.
I second.
All in favor of a 10-minute recess?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we're out of here in 10 minutes.
Oh, that's never happened. Sorry.
Oh, I lost your video, but the initiative requires the board to either adopt that ordinance in its form presented tonight, or to refer that to the voters for consideration at a special election. And within that memo, I also described that there are other possible action items that the board could consider, which would include beginning its own public policy process to kind of examine some of the issues that are driving these initiatives related to transparency and accountability, and perhaps try to pursue some more comprehensive legislation if that's something that the board wish to do. As part of that process, the town could engage in some public outreach and perhaps some public education and internal education sessions related to Cora and other issues. And so that'd be one option to take, kind of parallel to its action on this initiative. Other action alternatives that I put in my memo would be that if the initiative was passed either by the board or at a special election, the board could amend the initiative to remove unlawful provisions. There's oftentimes some political pressures not to do something like that when there are citizen initiated ordinance that are presented to the town. Another item potential action item for which the time would be somewhat short on would be to submit an ordinance addressing these to go to an election at the same time as the initiative. And that could be as comprehensive or broad as or narrow as time might allow for. At the last Board of Trustees meeting, it was kind of left unclear where exactly how to proceed, or Mr. Bruner and the Petitioners Committee proceed with the initiative, but he and I had some follow-up discussions and about what Mr. Bruner might be willing to do with respect to the initiative. And I guess let me pause there for a moment to say that at the last meeting, there were some questions as to, well, what is this, in my view, as the town attorney, what would be the scope of the authority of the Petitioners Committee to take actions with respect to the form of that initiative ordinance. And while Title 31 is the municipal government statutes are silent on that with respect to citizens initiative, the parallel statute as it relates to statewide initiatives provides that the Petitioners Committee, it's called something else on the state level, but the Petitioners Committee has the authority to withdraw a petition so long as there is that verified statement of withdrawal submitted at least 60 days prior to an election. There is not any authority to actually amend the ordinance once submitted based on the signatures on the petition, but the Petitioners Committee could withdraw that petition. And one reason for doing so might be if the town were to adopt some legislation or in the form of an ordinance that might get at those same issues driving the initiative in a way that would be satisfactory to the Petitioners Committee. So having said all that, and I've was connected with Mr. Bruner today, and he indicated to me, and I'm sure Mr. Bruner can speak for himself here in this meeting, that he would be willing to withdraw the initiative if the board were willing to adopt an ordinance that would address a more narrow ordinance that would address two things. And that would be, number one, to have records that may be withheld from inspection under Cora as they relate to infrastructure and finance and concern data, that those be determined to be disclosed. In other words, the Board of Trustees could take away that discretion, and those would be things that would be available upon a Cora request as public records. The second item related to access of the trustees to records and to infrastructure, and more as a policy statement, and there might be a little nuancing there that would need to be sorted out, but those are the two main issues that were in the ordinance. And so I wanted to inform council that one other option, in addition to those that were in my memo and I just went through, would be for the Board of Trustees to not take action on the initiative, and that would allow it to or not adopt the initiative, but instead to refer it to the voters for a special election on May 3rd. And that May 3rd date is to coordinate with the county and which is the special election date, and save money for the town on conducting election. So it'd be to refer that to the voters for that date. But then it could direct me to prepare an ordinance in line with what Mr. Bruner had proposed for its consideration at a meeting, special meeting to be held next week. Any action that the board would take tonight on this option would really just be direction and not necessarily a decision on that ordinance, but it would at least place itself in the potential position to take the action on such an ordinance. And based on Mr. Bruner's representations, if that ordinance were to be passed, that he would take timely action to withdraw that initiative prior to the deadline to do so, which would be which would be March 4th. So that was a lot, and I hope everyone on the board was able to review my memo prior to this meeting and understands its options here. And again, one of them being that last one that I outlined. And so if there's any questions related to that, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you. All right, questions from the board?
I have a question.
Sure.
So I'm trying to sort through this. I have your memo, Jeff. So you were suggesting that Part B would be direct the town attorney to prepare an ordinance for its consideration at a special meeting to be held on February 28th. So we're going to feedback potentially on that already meeting, addressing the two narrow issues. So the point being that the language you drafted that was appended to your memo would serve as the basis for the ordinance to be considered on the 28th.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I think what you have in your hand is a message that I sent to the board today.
Yes.
As my conversation with Mr. Bruner. In the packet, there's a separate memo, but yes, that language that's in the second half of my memo to the board was what Mr. Bruner had sent to me as what he was thinking the form of that ordinance would be, understanding that based on our conversation, there may be a few things that I would want to revise to make sure it comports with Cora and is otherwise just kind of in a good form for something that's going to live within the code.
Okay.
I'll let someone else ask questions.
Do you have other questions from the board? Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ms. Smith.
Well, then I'm taking this that if Bill is willing to not put his initiative on the ballot, we essentially are promising to adopt the essence that the two of you talked about, or that Mr. Bruner provided to you that is in your today memo? Right?
A little bit of a reverse order. So
Okay.
unless the board adopts the initiated ordinance tonight, it's going to go to, it will be set for the special election. But there's still an opportunity for Mr. Bruner to withdraw it. And what he has indicated is that he would be willing to withdraw it in the event that the town adopted an ordinance that generally contained the items that are, those narrow two issues that I just described and that were in that email.
So let me make sure we have the sequence correct. That the board tonight would let the ordinance go to public vote, and that we would vote on, or you let the citizens initiative go to public vote, and that on Monday, we would vote on the ordinance as outlined, correct?
Correct. And then if passed, Mr. Bruner indicated he'd be willing to then timely withdraw that petition or the initiative, so that it would know, despite it going to a public vote, there's still the opportunity to withdraw it. So then it wouldn't.
Okay.
Yes.
So that gives him some time to see our sincerity.
Yeah.
And if we turn out to be insincere, it can still go to the voters.
Yes.
Yeah, or if the trustees simply determine that this isn't in the best interest of the town, or whatever reason, if you choose not to adopt that at a special meeting, that narrow ordinance, there still would be the ability that the larger ordinance would still be going to the public vote. Yes.
Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Thompson.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm wondering if the citizens initiative moves to the public vote and were to pass as written, would that put the town in any situations where action was needed due to some of the language issues in the current initiative?
Yeah. So good question. And as we discussed at the last board meeting, in my view, there are a number of things in I'll just call it the larger ordinance that are unlawful. There's things that are in conflict with Cora, and then with respect to municipal court jurisdiction, there are issues that are unconstitutional. So I think it would place the board in the position, if passed, it would place the board in a position of needing to determine or to address those things. And there might be a couple of ways to do that. One could be to have a court declare, rather than me, have a court declare what things are unlawful or not. Or the board could take action to amend that legislation. There's the ability to do that. If this becomes part of the code, it's part of the code, and the board has the ability to make amendments to its code without taking it to a public vote. But when there are things that are become part of the code through an initiative, a lot of time there are pressures to not amend those, particularly not immediately after that they're adopted. But in my view, they would present some problems. The larger ordinance would present some problems to the town, because in my view, several of the provisions are unlawful.
Any other questions from the board? Yes, Mr. Johnson.
I guess not a question, but just a comment. I think it's unfortunate that we waited this long to decide all this, because I think we could have, and I appreciate you, Mr. Bruner, being willing to negotiate, work out a possible ordinance, because I think that's the best solution for the town. I think if we would have had a little more time, we could have worked out this ordinance now and, had a decision. But anyway, thank you very much.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, Ms. Smith, did you have a comment?
Well, I guess, no, I guess I was going to propose a motion that would then, but we don't have the. Oh, well, no.
You have to set the date of the election.
Yeah.
Well, we do.
Madam Mayor, I mean, I would suggest taking any public comment there might be on this, but then in the event there were to be a motion, or when there, if there's one form of a motion could be to refer the initiative to a public vote at a special election to be held on May 3rd, 2022.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, let's take public comment.
Well, I have one.
Sure.
First, looking at the screen here, I don't see the podium on the video feed, is that right?
Yeah, I can't see you.
Well, just because we've been talking on the phone.
Oh, there we go.
Hello.
Hey.
All right. Yeah, so, yeah, I hope this works out. Basically, it is things, you're not going to hide the more water studies if the board had ever hidden them. And I think the board has in the past tried to hide some of these things. I don't think that's right, and this will eliminate that option. Those things will be public. And the other part, I want to make it clear that and this is for you guys, which is for us. Only those, the board shall have broad access to all the records and the facilities of the town. So I just want to be totally clear going in. That's what the committee feels would justify withdrawing the issue. So.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brewer.
Thank you.
All right, any other public comment?
Madam Mayor, sorry if I could interrupt. And if I could just ask, Mr. Bruner, could you just confirm that as I relayed our conversation to the board was accurate and you agree with that?
I think so. Unfortunately, I was unaware that the memo had arrived and I hadn't actually read it, but I think we have an understanding, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Have I said something that makes you question my understanding of?
No, I just wanted to make sure, and you know, that I wasn't putting words in your mouth, that you in the petitioners committee would be willing to withdraw.
I think you described it quite well, and I think the board is even more receptive to your words than they are to mine. So, thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Keenan, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to commend everyone in the room. This is the way I think that we should be doing the town's business. Very cordial, friendly, where everyone loves each other. We love this town, we love each other. I think Jesus once talked about this. And I think it's great. And, you know, someone who's been in this town longer than I have reminded me, well, didn't remind me, educated me, this water situation has been going on for as long as they've lived in this town, over 20 years. So I think that this is a time where we get together and we actually get everything fixed.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much.
Anything else from the public? Yes, Mr. Mark.
It sounds as though there may be some sort of resolution at hand, and I think that's great news. I do hope that you can all take this process as a learning that maybe when a citizen brings something to your attention, that it deserves your time and response, so that not everyone has to create an ordinance and petition to get your attention to get it to this point. I think that there's a lot of things that have been brought before you that have fallen by the wayside simply because people don't have the drives that Mr. Bruner has to see them addressed. And I'm one of them. And I'd appreciate your attention to a couple of various other subjects to go back and look at. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else from the public? Yes, Brianna.
My name is Brianna Greer, Solid Solution Geosciences, currently a contractor for the town of Paonia. I have not read this entire resolution, but on hearing what I just heard, I just want to express some concern that it be very clearly stated that it is the board as a whole or whether individuals, not with the board and without board approval, have access to facilities. And that access not occur through contacting employees of contractors to gain that access. There has to be a pathway outside contractors. Contractors are not authorized, unless the contractor is authorized, I am not, to provide such access. And we can discuss this further later, but it creates an untenable risk situation for your contractors if people are randomly coming up asking for tours of facilities those contractors do not own. You do not you don't ask your neighbor's plumber for a tour of your neighbor's house. Right? That's inappropriate. So I just want to make sure that you all are considering that in this resolution as you approve it and as you move forward as a citizenry. It also puts the town at risk when individuals contact contractors, because there is no defined risk pathway and there is no defined authority pathway. That be an important part of the idea that all board and committee members have access to a facility. Should also check with state regulations regarding how these facilities are governed, and consider that every access to water facilities has potential for negative action and negative consequence, that not every person who is on your board or on your committee is going to be well-intended.
Thank you. Anything else from the public?
Yeah. I think you should listen to those words very carefully. We're not talking about our neighbor's house and our plumber. We're talking about our water system and our board of trustees.
Please, no comments if you haven't been recognized by the chair.
I want to be very clear that this ordinance says that each trustee shall have broad access to all the records of the town and the town's facilities. Now, how that broad access is defined is going to be a further conversation. But this board and boards before it and boards before that have been waiting for a tour of the water facility for a long number of years, okay? And it never happens, and actually, I don't think it can happen as a board, because that's a public meeting. And then you're gonna have everybody in town traipsing in there through behind you. So it's gonna have to, if you choose to view the town's facilities, I think you're gonna have to do it in probably groups of two or one. And you as trustees should have the right to view those facilities. If, you know, it's the policy you're going to have to set. If there are ill-intentioned people on the board, oh my God, but you know, you might need to deal with that. But that's the intent of this ordinance that you're going to be, that's the deal. That's the deal here. So be careful.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Jeff.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Conklin.
And one quick follow-up to that comment is that, you know, with that broad access to infrastructure, I think, you know, one thing that we might provide a little more detail in this ordinance for consideration by the board would be that it would need to be pursuant to the appropriate procedure. And so, you know, it's not that every trustee gets the keys to the water plant. Those visits need to be coordinated and done in an appropriate manner. And so I think that is also implied within that understanding, but I will work on that more before this comes to you guys, if that's what you wish, next week.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Patterson, I think you had your hand up. Oh, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to follow up on Brianna's point, and I agree with quite a bit of what you're saying. And as a result, I have several motions I would like to propose when we get to this part of the agenda, right, to clarify how and when trustees should be allowed to be on tours.
Okay.
So I have three of those that hopefully can address some of it, and that would maybe help Mr. Conklin in his, if they pass, give you some ideas of a way to maybe go about some of this. Thank you.
Great.
One other thing, the other issues of interpretation of ordinances and the way ordinances are enforced, that issue won't go away. We're kicking it down the road again. And I want to say, I really hope that Mr. Knudsen can come forward with some information about the, help me say the word correctly, ombudsman?
Yeah, ombudsman.
Okay, it's an interesting idea. I'd really like to hear more about that because I think it's something that the town sorely needs. But that's the end of my comment.
All right, Ms. Patterson.
Thank you. I just wanted to quickly say, these citizens petitions don't happen in a vacuum. They're happening for a reason. And I think that's sort of what we have to back up and address. Like, there's a lot of trust that has to be, rekindled, and there's a lot of transparency that has to happen. And that's why these things are happening. Things are not working. So this is the recourse. They're not, that's why the water, when the water debacle happened, there wasn't enough questions being answered. There wasn't transparency. So the water moratorium was a result of that. And now this is another citizen's petition as a result of things that are not being taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Keenan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like, when Bill is saying that it would be a town meeting if everyone on the board went up to inspect the facilities. I'd ask the lawyer if that's correct. I don't think it is. It is correct. Well, then what I suggest is that I do think that everyone should go up together. And I would suggest that if it is considered a town meeting, offer to have the people that want to participate here in this room. And you can do that by a video link. Because I think it's a good idea that everyone gets on the same page. And this is a learning situation. So thank you very much.
I have an answer for that.
Okay. Thank you. All right, anything else?
I think Bill spoke very well.
Okay, anything? Yes, Ms. Watson.
So I'm Suzanne Watson. I don't want to hash this to death, especially if there's some answers on the board. But when we're talking about having to have a town meeting, so the trustees can see it's never going to happen. And that's been the problem in the past. There's been tours that have been promised and they just never happen. So, it's not only the trustees, we have boards like the Water Advisory Board, and they're authorized to do studies and make findings. So realize there are boards that are authorized by law, by our laws, to do this. So you have to acknowledge that, but it makes it more facile, easier to implement. Like if it needs to be done a little bit more quickly, to have to coordinate, you know how hard it is to coordinate meeting times for everybody. And I think there is a place for a general tour, but I think, there are certain board members who might be on a committee or heavily involved in something that I think you can probably, and of course there has to be some sort of a pathway to make that happen correctly, but yeah, I support keeping something like that in the ordinance. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right, anything else? Yes, Mr. Knudsen.
Mr. Compton, I'm wondering if there's a possibility of a proper gathering of trustees to do a tour when no decisions are being made. We're not doing anything legislatively. We're being informed almost like in a work session. I'm trying to understand what the legal prohibitions are of doing something like that.
Sure. So, under the open meetings law, anytime there are more than two trustees that would be gathered for the purpose of conducting public business, that it's required that it be noticed and open to the public. So work sessions are meetings that are open to the public. Site visits that are often, sometimes if you have a site visit done in conjunction with, other town business that that would typically need to be noticed. Now, sometimes, if trustees are gathered for social occasions or if there are chance encounters and things like that, those wouldn't constitute a meeting. The open meetings law, as you suggested, does say that there's kind of needs to be the possibility of legislative action, but I would say as a general matter, it's practice for those meetings to be noticed and open to the public. Now, I feel like, not to with respect to this particular issue, it might be in conducting a site visit or tour of the water plant or another facility. I feel like we're getting a bit off topic with with what's at hand here, and I may have I have some can provide to the board some later suggestions as to some good practices, perhaps how to organize and conduct those things down the road.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Conklin. Yeah, so this is a later discussion. Yes, Mr. Thompson.
I have maybe a little bit higher level question that's involved with this, which is, what is the protocol for the public to come to our attorney to have these conversations? Is there a process in which that can happen that's official, or can they reach out to our attorney and have those? Can we reach out to our attorney and have those conversations as members of the public?
Again, I think that's a discussion outside of this current discussion. We can address that, but I think right now we need to focus on the agenda item. All right. Anything else from the board? Yes.
I don't know if this is outside of the scope as well, but we did have a water treatment plant tour, which Trustee Meck and I attended, and I believe others were invited.
Mr. Bear and I have done a tour as well.
How was that conducted? That went through the town administrator, who invited just us two, or was everyone invited?
There was a couple different tours that were held, and there were, the advisory water committee was invited to one, and board members and others were invited to the others, yeah.
And this was for the wildlife corridor. So I don't know why we can't go through the town administrator to set these things up.
And I think this is the discussion for later on in the agenda. I mean, we're going to discuss this anyway, so that's when we should be taking this. So would somebody like to make a motion to send the initiative to the public for election on May 3rd?
I would like to make a motion to send this initiative to the for the public vote on May the 3rd.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
So is this ignoring, this is just the perfunctory thing we have to do?
Yeah, this is what we have.
Okay, thank you.
All right, is the board ready to vote? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes.
So just one last note. I hope that I will be able to review the official language that you come up with well in advance of their voting on it.
Yeah, and
or some in advance.
yeah, and Madam Mayor, I just, if the board could, I sense this is the direction you want to go, but if you guys could make a motion or just formally direct me to work on that ordinance and bring it back to you on February 28th, and I'd be happy, Bill, to reach out with you once I've put that together.
Okay, can we get a motion?
Hopefully more than an hour or two before.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Can we get a motion to direct the attorney to write this ordinance? Yes.
I'll make a motion to direct the attorney to write this ordinance and for submittal to us prior to the 2/28 meeting.
Okay, do I have a second on that?
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, let's go on then to Redline Ordinances. Oh, yes, Ms. Mack?
So we discussed this in a meeting last August, I believe, and there were some, when Mr. Bruner first brought this before the board, we discussed it, and a few of the other ideas, I'm just throwing this out there as part of a gesture to remind to let Mr. Bruner know that certainly I, as a trustee, am very interested in increasing transparency. One of them was to date stamp draft and stamp draft documents as such for clarity. Identify work product as such that it's subject to change. Utilize ClearGov more. We do have checks on ClearGov right now, but they need to be cleaned up, and perhaps maybe be a little more descriptive in what the checks are for. Also, we had talked about, and it was requested that staff provide information on getting our emails, all emails made public. And I think we should continue to pursue that. The last thing I'd like to recommend is maybe an ad hoc committee be created to review the town records policy, which is in ClearGov, and ensure that it is up to date with Cora Open Records Act, and just clean it up. So just want to throw those things out there.
Okay. All right. Well, do you want to make a motion about setting up an ad hoc committee?
Oh, sure. I move that the board create an ad hoc committee to review and ensure that the town records policy is up to date with current Cora records. And just look for any inconsistencies or redundancies. That sounds.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, discussion by the board.
It sounded to me like that's what Mr. Conklin was going to propose in this amendment that he's drafting about our records. Cora, he said, to make
Is that-
sure that we're in line with Cora.
No,
I don't think so.
no, I don't believe so. That what he's doing is specifically for the initiative. And that we, having somebody look at our records request, our policies, and make sure that they're in line with Cora. That is not what our term is doing. Okay. Further discussion from the board? Okay, discussion from the public? Yeah.
I was just going to provide that clarification that what Trustee Mack's talking about is the larger open record request policy that's on the website, and that has the above and beyond the statute policy had always just been internal. It was handled how whichever clerk was the clerk at the time handled the policy, and that policy was the policy that I adhered to as clerk, that I put into writing and brought to the board, because one of the statute requirements is that that your policy be published so that people have access to it through your website. So that's the policy that is that Trustee Mack is talking about, that the committee would be looking at, I believe, with my inclusion in that as holding the clerk position as well, on the extended definition of how the policy is adhered to at town hall.
Okay. All right. Any further comment? Okay, anything from the public? Yes, Ms. Watson.
I'd just like a little bit more clarification about when the committee would be formed, by when.
Well, that's what we will decide. After we pass the motion.
Okay, so you're talking about it tonight.
Correct.
Okay, great.
Correct. All right. All ready to vote? Okay, all in favor of creating an ad hoc committee to look at the records policy of the town and to assure that it complies with Cora. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
All right, so we need people to volunteer to be on this committee. Okay, Ms. Meck is one. I will volunteer as well. Okay, and so then we will get together and set up a meeting and go forward. All right, great. All right, now let's move on to.
I have a question about the committee.
Yes, Ms. Watson.
So I was just wondering if a member of the public could be invited to be on the committee too. I don't know, I mean, I don't want to volunteer Bill Bruner, but,
Well, yeah, the public is welcome to come to our meetings, yeah,
okay.
absolutely.
So you will, post meetings maybe on the
Sure.
bulletin board?
Yeah, we need
upfront?
to set it up first.
Okay, which is unusual for committees to do, but it would be nice to see that
Sure.
public posting. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, now on to Redline Ordinance 01/2022. So we have in front of us the Advisory Water Committee ordinance that has been amended to make the changes that have been suggested. Any questions from the board about the changes or anything included in this ordinance? Yes, Mr. Knudsen.
It's just so much easier to deal with a red line than having to look at two documents. So thanks for giving us, I hope that all of our future things come in this format because it helps us make decisions. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else from the board? Yes.
So I know that Tammy, trustee Beck and I worked on this, but I have to just add on the first page with the list of whereases, I had not read what Colorado revised statute 3135-501 said prior to this. And it is the creation of a special governing body of a city or town that has the power to create a non-political local legislative body designated as a board of commissioners. So this is not a statute we want to be referencing under this
Okay.
citizen committee. This is creation of a separate water board that oversees the water of a town outside of the trustees. So having read that and went, oh, so what I would like to propose in addition to our red line is to remove the second whereas.
Okay.
And on the first red line whereas, stop, let's see, I'm sorry. Whereas with the adoption of ordinance 2020-09, the town created an advisory water committee, period.
Okay.
Semicolon and then the last whereas. So
great.
Anyway, apologies for not having noticed that first. And I thought I should read that statute. Oh, no, we don't really want that. So,
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any other comments from the board? Okay, seeing nothing. Anything from the public? Yes, Mr. Bruner.
Again, apologies for hogging all your time. I want to call your attention to the very end of the red line ordinance with the restriction on the chair of the board voting except in a tie and burdening them with full Robert's Rules of Order. I just think that it's an unreasonable burden for a board of that size and that makeup, that there's no reason that the chair of that committee shouldn't be able to vote. The original question was, should the staff people be able to vote and the trustee? And somehow this has morphed into a prohibition on the chair of the board of the committee voting on things. And I don't understand where that direction came from. And I think it's completely inappropriate. And if it's appropriate here, I think you're going to have to go back where you probably, to be consistent, might go back and burden all of your committees with Robert's Rules of Order. I just think it's unreasonable to expect them to even know how that works. So I would urge someone to make a motion to strike that part out of there and let this board try to just work it out itself without having to spend all their time on Robert's Rules of Order. It'll be a burden.
Thank you. Yes.
I agree with Mr. Bruner.
I just lost some
Well, do you want to make a motion
I move
to
that
take that part out?
last sentence in section 2-10-40 be stricken.
So do you want to take out the Robert's Rules of
Yes.
Order 1, 2? So the last two sentences on page 2 under section 210-40.
Yeah.
So that
Last two
does the
sentences.
staff vote?
No, it doesn't say anything about voting. It takes the Robert's Rules of Order out and that the chair shall be entitled to vote on a time. All right, do I have a second on it?
Second.
Okay, further discussion from the board? All right, anything else from the public? All right, so we have a motion to strike the last two sentences of section 2-10-40 from the Redline Ordinance. All in favor? Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, is there anything else we want to change on this prior to passing, to having a motion?
Page had two suggestions.
Right, and they will be incorporated, and we can incorporate them in the motion as well. Anything else?
I guess the only other question is, should it read Bo Nerlin or should it read Jeff Conklin?
Oh, it should read Jeff Conklin. Sorry, Jeff, we're signing your name to something. Yes, Mr. Conklin.
I think he was.
I think it's okay to leave Bo on this. I think he was involved in drafting of it and so forth. And so I think that's fine to leave.
Okay. Great, thank you. All right, anything else from the public? All right, hearing none. Can we get a motion to accept ordinance 1-2022 with the changes as noted?
Okay, motion to adopt ordinance. I'm sorry, what was the number?
01-2022.
Thank, I'm 22. Motion to adopt ordinance 01-20-22 to include the suggestions made to the whereas entries.
Okay, do I have a second on that?
Second.
Further discussion from the board? All right, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, next up on our agenda is review and possible action on SSG contract extension. That has been included in the packet. We are going to pass our 45-day emergency situation, and it is being proposed that we go to a month-to-month contract with SSG while we are waiting to see if we can get another ORC. Any questions from the board for either Ms. Ferguson or Ms. Greer? Would you be able to answer some questions? Sure. Okay. Any questions from the board? Okay, seeing none. Okay, Ms. Mark.
It's all right.
Okay.
Oh, that's so funny. So my question was looking at the task summary, and it was the plant checks, task 40, just the way it was worded, will remain available for occasional limited daily plant checks. And my question was, is this to go beyond April into the rest of the year, or simply through the end of this extension or amendment?
The intent, excuse me.
Yes, please.
The intent of the contract is to simply fill the gap. Right now, you only have 2 employees who are only very lowly trained at all on these plants or on reporting requirements or familiar with interacting with an ORC. I have a couple that I'm working on trying to get you scopes to fill in until your RFP is filled. My intent here is to work myself out of a job. That's always my intent in any kind of environmental consulting, is that I want to fix the problem and leave. Unfortunately, Mr. Moore is unwilling to continue beyond February 28th for the town or for SSG, partly because this is considered a high-risk scenario. It's a very high-risk scenario. So no, that is so that because you have 2 employees, you have holidays, and someone has to check the plant both plants every day to ensure safe water delivery and that there will be no impacts or limited impacts to environmental, to aquatic life in the creek. That you can plan ahead and say, hey, could you come in and walk the plant really quick? And so that we can create the forms that we've been working on so that a remote ORC and ideally the board and the committee, once it's set up, can see what's been happening at the plant without having to interact with SCADA, which you don't want everyone interacting with the SCADA. You want that to be pretty limited. So the intent is just simply to be like, hey, so-and-so got sick. The other person had someone die. Who can check the plant today? And I think that there's a lot of room within the water committee and within your discussions of how the committee and board should access the town, access the facility through the town. That maybe someone in the committee or board can fill that. But right now, these processes don't exist, as have been made abundantly evident in the past week.
My only question was, were you intending to go beyond April with that service? Based on
Well,
this,
frankly,
or were you, because it's
I'm
not
not.
clear.
I'm not, no,
That's all.
the contract only goes to the end of April.
That's all I
Yes.
wanted to know,
Yes.
because the way it was worded, it wasn't clear to me.
No, the contract is only through
Okay,
April,
thank you.
and frankly, based on the next agenda item, I'm not sure I would follow that contract. I'm not sure I would sign that at this point. I'm not sure I'd execute.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else from the public? Yes, Mr. Rock.
I was going to recommend that you guys add this to the consent agenda because at this juncture, you don't really have a choice as to whether or not you accept this contract.
Well, the consent agenda has already been
I know,
done.
that's what I'm saying is that this is what I would have added. And so the motion to accept it and the vote would probably be in order to, for expedience.
Got it. All right, yes, Mr. Green.
So I don't doubt Brianna's good intentions. And I think her fellow Josh is a really stand-up guy. But if what's presented in the packet is the entire contract, given the next item on the agenda, I would question, as a veteran of many contracts, whether there is enough enough detail in this contract to avoid misunderstandings in the future.
Okay, thank you. All right, yes, Ms. Watson.
I'm really concerned about the new staff onboarding. I mean, this contract is for 2 months, and I don't know how possibly two complete novices are really going to be able to absorb the information that's going to be presented to them. We're spending money on this new staff onboarding, and I'm wondering if there's some way to capture the information a bit, because we have no idea what's even going to happen with these new employees. So I just think it's a real shaky situation right now with our public works staffing and the level of experience and expertise and education, perhaps, that the people who have recently been hired possess. I mean, I'm just really concerned about that. And I'm just wondering if there's some way we can capture some of this information that we're paying for, because you could potentially have to start over again in 3 months. And I don't know, we're gonna have a brand new ORC maybe into the future here, and there's gonna be some learning that they're gonna have to undertake. And I'm just, it's pretty rocky to me. I just don't understand how you're gonna facilitate this smoothly over the next few months. I really believe that needs some discussion.
Thank you. Yes.
I had another question that was under task 20, and it was a reference to the temporary circuit ORC. So is there, this is a question for Corinne, is there an effort to try to find a circuit ORC?
Yes.
Who would be on site, not
Yes.
the previous ORC?
Correct.
So, and that you're looking at that as someone to have on board before you hire the 10 month.
Yes,
Okay,
we still, yes, because we still need someone operating, the CDPHE only allows a 30-day, you have to replace your ORC and report within 30 days. So with Josh leaving beginning of March, we only have until the end of March to have someone else. And so that person and their costs and scope of work and all of that would have to come to the board. We would bring that to the board and provide you that information for approval, and they would operate in that interim. And hopefully, potentially, if a good fit, would be one that would be submitting an RFP for the long term as well.
Okay, thank you. You know, we're just finding out tonight that the RFP's been posted, and then I saw that language. So there are quite a few segmented moving parts going on. So
Yes.
thank you for that clarification.
Okay, anything else from the board? Yes, Mr. Thompson.
My question is, does the scope of work for the project indicate what the timing of this agreement is, or I'm not seeing the 2 months written into this document, and I'm wondering if it needs to be added or if that's referenced on the scope of work.
Okay. It's
Can you answer that question, Ms. Greer?
in the budget.
Did you find that in the budget?
It's just, there's a budget page which reflects that.
It does reflect it, but I don't know if we would like the time as the town, does it serve the town to have the timing clearly defined in the work order agreement?
Mayor, may I?
Yes, please, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the contract is based on a number of hours. Certainly, those hours would not be exceeded at any time, even into April. And the cost estimate page indicates when it's anticipated that those hours might be spent, with the bulk of them being spent in March to continue to facilitate sampling. I am the DMR cognizant official for the town at this point, so submitting and just starting monitoring reports. And it's anticipated, but yes, there's a lot up in the air right now. We all know this. It's anticipated then that the hours would decline into April. As your people were trained, as the ORC contracts were worked out, as the fulcrum forms, the online forms provided transparency for oversight to a remote ORC and to the board and committee.
So as the work order is written, we're operating on the hourly rate and the total expenditure. And okay.
All right.
Thank you for the clarification.
Any other questions or comments from the board? All right, can we get a motion to approve the solid solution geosciences contract extension?
Madam Mayor, I move that we accept the extension of the SSG contract.
Do I hear a second? Second. All right, further board discussion? All right, we have a motion to accept the extension of the solid solution geosciences extension. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, let's move on to the next item, the letter to the Board of Trustees from SSG. Okay, SSG has sent us a very clear letter about their concerns with the water, with the visits, unauthorized visits to the water treatment plant. And we have a reply from Ms. Smith on that. So, Ms. Smith, you said you had some motions you wanted to bring up in this regard?
I do. My initial drafting of the motions was done before I understood that the RFP has been published. So let me just read to you what I had, and then we need to modify it to reflect real time. My first motion is that the ORC RFP shall include a requirement for the contracted ORC to conduct tours for the trustees of the 2 million gallon, 1 million gallon and sewer plant to be scheduled during the month of May 2022. The ORC RFP shall also contain the requirement to hold one meeting respectively for the public to tour both water treatment plants and the sewer treatment plant one time a year. Public tours shall be scheduled during the months of August and September. This task shall be included in the contract for the ORC hired by the town of Paonia. So at this point, I don't think it's too late to it's not in the RFP, but it might not be too late to add to a contract.
Oh, with the
Our time, because I really think, again, what we learned at that plant was invaluable. And I so apologize, and it really kind of was, Brianna, when she did her first presentation, really encouraged the town and citizens to go to the treatment plant. So I apologize for what we did to Josh. I did not mean to do that. He was absolutely wonderful with the information shared. And from my perspective, being a trustee is not the same as just a citizen. You know, we're responsible for all of this. So with that in mind, I want to clarify that, and I'm thinking this could help with the motion, the initiative, or the new ordinance for Bill. I think it's really important that we all do have an opportunity to see these plants. And I will rewrite this to remove the RFP if you all agree. But I had a second one. And, well, actually I have three. The second one is motion that the RFP include a provision that the contract ORC will provide a report on all the previous month's repair activities needed and completed, other repairs identified that will be completed, and maintenance schedules completed to be incorporated into the meeting agenda packet for the first meeting of every month. So this would be included in the contract for the ORC hired by the town of Paonia. And I do that because it's really important we know what is going on with these repairs. And my last one is motion that after April 5th, 2022, all current and future trustees be provided an orientation that includes a tour of all town-owned properties, including both water treatment plants, wastewater plant, town office, public works, and all equipment. And town, anyway, I'll continue. Again, because there is no process in place for new trustees to see anything except this room. And I think it's really important that we create a very standardized orientation process that does provide new trustees, all of that. So those are the three motions, which I would have to reword to some extent, but that is my proposed solution to allow for trustees under an organized administrative procedure to be able to see these plans. So what would you like to do with that?
Okay, well, let's get some input from the board. Let's start there. Okay, anything from the board about the, yes, Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, I think all this should be going through the town administrator. And then the town administrator goes down the ladder.
Well, that would be part of it. I mean, this would have to be done through.
I didn't hear anything about the town administrator.
Well, from my perspective, the contractors work with the administrator. So,
Right,
I mean,
so
we
we
can
shouldn't be
modify it.
going to the contractor, we should be going to the town administrator. Correct?
Well, in this regard, I'm talking about what the contractor is going to be expected to do and asked to be paid for. It's up to us behind the scenes to develop the internal policy. That's what I was thinking.
Right. And do you agree it should be going through the town administrator?
Yes, I think so.
Good.
Other comments or questions from the board? Yes, Ms. May.
Yeah, I would like to make a comment, just a general comment. I am not an evil, conniving opportunist like this letter makes me out to be, and I have the greatest respect for you, Ms. Greer, but I felt that part of this was a personal attack. We did not use our trustee position for personal gain nor to harm anyone. We did not have a nefarious plan. We also had not heard yet from anyone about scheduling a tour. We saw an opportunity and we took it. And I am very happy I did. It's bringing us to this so that we can better understand the laws. And when we come to the next part of the agenda where we have to approve some expenses, I could take a picture of the plan and point out to everybody exactly what is being done, exactly what is being talked about. So again, I do apologize for all of this inconvenience and for putting you on the spot, and certainly for putting Mr. Moore on the spot. We did not mean to inconvenience him. So with that, I got so much value out of this that I hope that everybody everybody gets to do a similar tour. It was invaluable. And for that reason, I do not regret it. It was invaluable. So yes, I am now really pushing for everybody to see this. So yeah, I would like to move forward with these motions. I think it's invaluable. To see it is completely different than to hear somebody talk about it. So,
Yeah, we're gonna let Mr. Thompson ask his question first.
I just want to have that addressed personally instead of having it addressed to you as a Robert's Rules of Order. I do want time to respond when I object to your characterization of my characterization.
I missed the last part of that. I'm sorry.
It's my understanding that the comments are supposed to be directed to the mayor, not to me.
Yes, this is true. It was, again, I took an opportunity. I'm sorry, I'm an opportunist.
Okay, Mr. Thompson.
Small town.
I think one thing that this illustrates is how important it is to be very careful with the way that we write the scopes of work for this kind of project. And if we need interaction or tours or things of that nature with our contractors, that they're specifically dictated into the scopes as the communication tool between our town and our consultants. And so in the future, if we want our consultants to give us tours or sit in our meetings, that we should be very clear in the scope of work, that that's our expectation. So that when this kind of things happen, we have an avenue to go to our consultants and ask them for these kinds of services.
Yes, Mr. Peterson.
I'm only one member of this board, and any action on the board or any action that we take should be done as a whole board, not as an individual. And that's where I take issue with the way this went. Now, I did get a call from one of the board members that went on the tour, was very enthusiastic, encouraged me to get a hold of the contractor. And in discussion with the contractor about setting up a time for a tour, I realized, wait a minute, there's some other people that need to be involved, because this contractor is being paid to trade our new people, not being paid to give me a tour. So I closed the conversation saying I will get a hold of the mayor and the town administrator. So what this does is this really gives us more, and I'm glad this came up, because it gives us a better idea of our role as trustees and how we work as a whole board, not as an individual. And so, like, one of the things that's very hard for people to grasp is we need the nuts and bolts on that. We need to understand that part of it. But at the same time, we need to act as a whole board. And so for us to reach out to a contractor and ask for something specific, that has to be an action by the whole board, not by an individual. Also, what's happening in this meeting right now is a violation of protocol, and it's being brought up. You do not address, I do not address Mr. Markle, I address the chair. And I think that's what's coming up right now that's happening in how we do our meetings. It takes the personal tension out of it when we address the chair with a question rather than the individual that raised it. And so that's another of the two lessons we're learning from this, about how we conduct meetings respectfully, but also how we work as a board making decisions, not as individuals. And it's a hard one to take because all of us want to take action, and we got some hero sheets about people taking action, but we're one of seven. Each of us are one of seven.
Thank you, Mr. Yes. Okay, Mr. Johnson.
Have we had, excuse me, any other citizens that have asked SSG for a plant tour?
Yes, Mr. Markle did.
Are we going to be charged for that?
I'm assuming so, yes. Mr. Thompson?
Thank you. If we don't, do we have a policy on communication with our consultants? It seems that everything should be filling through the town administrator when we're talking to as the project coordinator. And if we don't have a policy on how we communicate with our consultants, perhaps we need to draft one.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
I assume that once we have our election over, we'll have the new board members and they will be given some, we had Sursa come out and we had different, how to be a trustee. But before that, could we have, since we're not really having, we know who the people are going to be, couldn't we have something with them and the public, a meet and greet, so that the public has a chance to say, these are going to be your new trustees, and ask them questions and the back and forth with the public and the new trustees, so that, just like we would any new people. You didn't get a chance to talk to the public when you were filling up vacancies. Could we set something like that we?
Yeah, and usually that's done by like the League of Women Voters or something like that is the public forum where citizens can ask questions.
But we
And
won't
so-
have that.
No, we won't have that.
So can we do it ourselves?
I don't see why not. I mean, we would need somebody to organize it.
It's probably off this topic.
It is off this topic.
But
Yeah.
I'll organize it.
Okay, well, we'll work on that outside of this. So, yeah, other comments from the board? I know, let's make sure the board is finished first. Okay, comments from the public. Yes, Mr. Mark.
Okay, I apologize to the board and to Ms. Greer and Mr. Moore, I guess, if an apology is necessary. I'm happy to make whatever amends are appropriate. However, I do want to make sure that you are all aware that I did go to the water plant of my own accord on, I believe it was Thursday. It was the Thursday following our last meeting. And I felt as though I had been encouraged to do this at the first, the Zoom meeting where Ms. Greer gave a very candid and informative breakdown of the current state of our plan. And I don't have a video, so this is a transcript that was based off of volunteer citizens' written transcript. She said that I imagine you all might have a lot of questions, and one thing I would like to suggest is that the town or other concerned townspeople come and look at the plans and understand them. I think the best thing that can come out of all of this is an increased awareness of your water security and your obligations as a town and as a board member, and as board members, as future board members, and as interested citizens. Now, having been invited to go to the water plant previously during the filming of the tour, I took the initiative and went up there, and where I spent, I don't know how long, maybe an hour, talking to Mr. Moore, whom I found completely professional, very knowledgeable, and helpful in every fashion. I notified him that I was recording our interaction, and he also recorded audio of our time, which I think would indicate to any reasonable person that all of my actions were completely above board, well-intended, and there was no negative action. And I'd be happy to share this video with anybody. And I think it would be good for the board to ensure Ms. Greer, SSG, and Mr. Moore that they are facing no liability and that they be absolved of any intimation of any wrongdoing on their part, because they have done everything completely professionally and 100% above board. So if there's a change of policy that's necessary, by all means, I mean, that's kind of what we're deliberating here. But it sounds to me like the tone of what we've been told changed in the past 2 weeks. And I suspect that there was some communication from town staff or Mr. Thompson that would have caused a reason for this memo to be issued in the first place. So if you would like to have a good relationship with your contractors, make sure that they feel welcome and that they are not at risk. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we need to extend the meeting.
I'd like to make a motion to extend the meeting for 20 minutes.
Do I have a second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. Ms. Gerber.
Mayor Bachman, an invitation to the town is an invitation to the owners of the facility, not to every citizen. I have had reporters asking. Certainly, we can agree that we weren't supposed to give reporters tours. But somehow we were supposed to give Mr. Markle a tour. Furthermore, all of these people contacted an employee of the people who hold the liability, not the people who hold the liability. This created an exceptionally untenable liability situation. These individuals went into a building with standing puddles of water, bare wires, tripping hazards, overhead hazards, with zero understanding and zero acknowledgement of who held the liability. This is akin to your neighbor's plumber letting you have a tour of your neighbor's house. I don't own these facilities. Josh does not own these facilities. I do not have authority from the town to provide tours to anyone, which is why there hasn't been reporters in the plant. I have not given Josh authority to provide tours to anyone. This could quickly turn into, if there had been a catastrophic situation, even if Trustee Smith did not want to sue me, maybe her husband or children would, or maybe her insurance company would. Maybe her insurance company would sue me, because you don't get to choose who your insurance company sues, right? Maybe they would sue the town. Maybe they would sue Josh because he wasn't authorized by anyone to give a tour to anyone, right? And so in this liability situation, and in choosing to take matters into their own hands and contact someone whose phone number I never knew about, I don't know how you guys got the phone number.
I didn't know.
Like the liability situation, no consultant, no contractor wants to be in this situation. Ever. When you all made that choice, I am a single shingle. My house is on the line if you are injured. My livelihood is on the line if you are injured. If people touring this plant are injured under a tour that my employee authorized without permission, his house is potentially on the line. And this is my major objection. Not only was it a waste of time, it totally circumvented any reasonable process where the owner of the buildings is brought into discussion of whether there should be a tour or not. I asked Mayor Brockman, were you aware that there was going to be a tour?
No, I wasn't.
Was the town administrator aware that there was going to be a tour?
No, she was not.
And perhaps the mayor can address this question to legal counsel. Who's liable when citizens tour a plant without permission?
Can I just add, we are employees of the town of Paconia as trustees.
I would like that clarified legally, please.
Mr. Conklin, who is liable when citizens take a tour of an authorized tour of the town? Town
Did you
facilities?
say trustees? Officials?
Well,
No, we are citizens. I mean, we are employees of the town.
wait, let Mr. Conklin speak.
We're not just citizens.
I guess, Madam Mayor, I guess I would probably want to review that legal question in a bit more detail, but as a general matter, the Colorado Governmental Immunity Act would apply to property owner liability with the town as a property owner of the water plant. Now, there are exemptions to the immunity granted by the CGIA for certain instances. including if there's a dangerous condition that's present on a facility that's maintained. So I would probably want to just follow up with you in more detail as to a specific answer to that question. But if the harm was caused as a result of a dangerous condition of a facility, the town as a landowner would probably be the primary party with liability issues. Generally when you're having contractors that do perform work for the town, they're liable as a result of acts of their own negligence, and it's unclear if that's at issue here or not. So sorry I can't be more specific. Broad answer.
Thank you.
Mayor Brockert, if I may continue, these liability situations have to be clarified before you put your contractor's house on the line. It's absolutely unacceptable. I'm sure you learned a lot. I cannot address by fact anything you heard, nor can anyone else in this room. Certainly, an upcoming committee member is not an employee of the town. And yet, this person chose for themselves. I invited the town to organize tours to the plant. You all have access to my contract, and nowhere in there does it say, call up Josh and get a tour. It does not say that. I request the town that the mayor request a motion for indemnification of the town, myself and Mr. Moore, SSG and Mr. Moore in this matter, retroactively. Given the exposure to black mold, potential for litigation still exists.
Yes.
So I just, because this question was brought up, I just wanted to address a couple of things. First, I do want to state that at no time had Ms. Greer and I had any conversations about access to the plants prior to her coming in stating that she had a letter she wanted to supply to the board because of access. I was not aware. So this is no change in direction or a feeling from the contractor as far as from the previous Zoom meeting and this meeting. What I would say that, and also knowing very well, I know that there was no ill intent meant from I would revert to, of course, to the attorney, and I really appreciate Paige, Trustee Smith, Paige, what you presented with your motions, because I think that exactly addresses it. The conversations I've had since where the water gets muddy is that are you acting when an individual trustee or two trustees do something or schedule something or do something outside of direction by the board or conversation at the board level, and the board saying, yes, let's schedule tours in groups, whether or not you're operating as the trustee under that, or if you're operating as that individual citizen, because you don't lose that. So that was one part that was brought to my attention, as well as whether or not, while the town's insurance may be the primary insurance, could the town in turn litigate and say, we did not authorize a contractor outside of the scope of their agreement to allow access. So that wasn't something that the town had allowed. And I don't think any of these things anyone would have thought of these things if it hadn't have happened. And again, I know that there was no ill will, or having been in the plants myself many times, I know how incredibly useful it is to see them firsthand and walk through. And so I did want to state that.
Yes, Ms. Greer.
I just want to acknowledge it's very different when an employee of the town gives a tour of the plant versus a contractor. It's a very different liability situation. And I am very upset to have been put in that liability situation without anyone even telling me. Y'all went straight to my employee. It's not appropriate. And as you work towards this scope that's going to give you unfettered access to buildings and have ORCs having to let you anytime you want, I caution the board on where the liability is of that. And if you're going to put it with the ORC, and it will be with the ORC, it will be with the contractor, no matter what the contract says, they're gonna feel that liability, and they're gonna charge you for it.
Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, actually, I want to thank you, Trustee Smith, for acknowledging that you should have contacted Ms. Greer before going on your outing. I'm wondering why you didn't consider asking the town administrator first. This should have been your first point of contact. All this lack of transparency would have been avoided.
Okay, and Mr. Johnson, you should be talking to me.
I'm sorry. I think Ms. Greer states very clearly in her letter when she says, there is no transparent reason for trustees to contact contractor employees and request out-of-scope private citizen tours. I agree with Trustee Smith that she needs to reimburse the town $180. Everyone asks for transparency from others, but very few want to provide it themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. And I would say, Ms. Greer, that I agree that this process was handled the wrong way. It should have gone through the proper authorities, and that was beginning with the town administrator, who would then contact you, who would then contact the employees. And that would have solved this issue, and it would not have become what it was. And we do have, as trustees, we have a code of ethics we have to follow. And part of that code of ethics says that we operate as a board. We don't operate as individuals outside of that board. And that, just like becoming involved in personnel issues beyond the scope of what we are supposed to do, we are not supposed to be acting on our own. So yes, I apologize on behalf of the town for some inappropriate actions, and I hope we will set a policy that will prevent such issues happening again in the future. Yes.
I would like to again request that there be a motion for a waiver for the town, for myself, and for Mr. Moore, that is signed by the 3 individuals who availed themselves to this time without authority.
I would ask Mr. Conklin, would that be appropriate?
I'm not sure I followed that. If you could repeat it.
I would like to have a waiver signed retroactively by the citizens who chose to avail themselves to a plant tour. I'd like it created by the town to indemnify the town, SSG, and Mr. Moore.
So the trustees would waive any liability related to the visit that related to the water plant tour.
And Mr. Merkel. Three individuals toured the site.
I can certainly prepare, if the board directs me to, a liability waiver for them to sign in their individual capacities, if that is what, and they can choose to do so or not. The board can't compel those individuals to sign or to not sign that, but I can prepare that form for them to execute if they desire to.
My preference is that rather than me paying for a lawyer for someone else's intrusion into my liability and risk, that the state go ahead and ask you to prepare, or the board ask the attorney to prepare that waiver. If they choose to sign or not, it is up to them. I agree. It will also affect whether I am willing to sign the next contract.
All right. Yes, Ms. Matt.
It is clear I am a liability to this board. I hereby resign. I will sign your waiver. I wish you all the best on my.
Quiet. We will have order even when we have issues in this room.
This is ridiculous.
Please be quiet.
Tammy, no.
Tammy.
I'm done. Don't leave.
Hey,
Oh, come on. This is ridiculous. You gotta be joking.
is
You know, you gotta write
this
this. You have to look at this.
Ms. Patterson, you are out of
That
order.
administrator.
You have not been recognized by the chair.
To trustees, to the public for years on this issue. Postponing, delaying, not listening, you as well, Mary. So put it into context, why this happened and why the trustees took the initiative to go see it for themselves when we have been asking for months. She's aiming for a lawsuit against the town. If you don't see that, you all are blind. Or you're with her because you're in on it. Jesus.
Okay. All right. Would someone on the board like to make a motion for us, for our lawyer to draw up waivers of liability against and SSG and the contractor?
You need a motion to that?
I need a motion to that.
Okay, I make a motion that we instruct our attorney to create an indemnification.
Yeah, I guess I'm good. Is that the right word?
Not the right word.
A waiver of liability related to this.
Waiver of liability for the 3 individuals.
Okay.
To sign.
Can I get a
I don't think
second?
that's quite it. I don't think that quite gets it.
Yeah, I got you. Waiver, the attorney to draw up a waiver of liability to, oh, God, I lost it.
See?
We still need the motion. Okay.
Motion to ask the attorney to a waiver of liability
For the 3 individuals who toured the plant.
for the 3 individuals that toured the plant. I'm not sure that gets to it though.
Is that sufficient?
Can you hear it?
I think I think that gives me sufficient direction to prepare the form for people to consider to execute. So, yes.
Is that sufficient?
I would ask that the waiver include the town for the town's sake.
Okay, the town, SSG and Josh.
SSG and as the individual Josh Moore, since SSG had not authorized Josh Moore to provide any tour.
Okay.
So indemnifying.
Waiving liability for the tour, for
Pardon?
waiving liability.
Okay.
Yeah.
A waiver of liability.
So that's understood the tour was at their own risk.
Okay.
To protect SSG, Josh Moore, and the town of Paonia?
Yeah.
Is that, ask the attorney to draw up a waiver of liability to be signed by the 3 that toured the plant to protect SSG, Josh Moore, and the town of Paonia.
Okay. Signed 5 and 6. Okay, we have a second.
Yes, I second.
All right, any further discussion? All right.
Yes.
You know, we are at 9:46. We have 4 minutes left.
Too bad.
4 minutes left in the meeting before we either adjourn or we close. All right, so somebody make a motion to move this forward.
I'd like to move that we continue the meeting until 10 o'clock tonight.
All right, we have a second. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Mr. Martin.
If signing this waiver indicates that I will owe money to a town, I will not sign it.
I didn't hear that.
No,
If
there
this
is no
waiver
money
indicates
involved.
that I will owe money to the town, I will not sign it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Ms. Watson, I believe you had your hand up.
Yes. So, I'm wondering, is there going to be an opportunity to speak after this vote on the same topic?
No.
Okay, so I want to say, Mr. Markle is not just a citizen, he's a board member. He is the Water Advisory Board member, and they are authorized by ordinance to make findings and investigate. And maybe you needed to make that a little bit more clear, what the process and the way investigation should happen, because it sounds a little ambiguous to me. There's nothing that says they have to ask permission from the town administrator. It's a board that's been set up by the town board to report to the town board. So I think there's some real gray area there. I'm wondering if we need to get a hazmat team in on the water treatment plant, if it's truly that dangerous. And I'm really uncomfortable with how aggressive, hostile, and litigious this woman that you hired is. And I'm very uncomfortable with you continuing any sort of professional relationship with her. I've never seen anything like this before. You guys are volunteers. I'm sorry you were a little bit enthusiastic, but to be raked over the coals for this is so wrong. I don't think you should be agreeing with her, Mary. I don't think so. You can apologize respectfully and say this wasn't happening, but I think this has been handled like a circus. And I'm really wondering about the drama that the whole state of the plant has presented with it. It's been extremely titillating and dramatic. And I'm wondering about this contractor. I just wonder what hormone she's on.
Oh, please.
That is a personal attack, Ms. Watson, and that is out of.
No, that's a question.
No, that is a personal attack. Mr. Bruner?
I do not apologize for the saying. I think what you're looking at here is a inexperienced contractor with an inexperienced administrator and an inexperienced board. I think what you've received from the contractor is a uncalled for, vicious personal attack on the integrity of board members on this board, one of whom has walked out because of that attack. And while talking about proper procedures and the code of conduct, the mayor has violated that code of conduct by making a groveling, abject apology to this person in violation of that very code that requires no board member shall make any representation for the board on any matter the board has not voted on, which you have just done. And it's just cost you one of the best trustees you've got, one of the only trustees that is not a mushroom. You know about mushrooms, you keep them in the dark and you feed them manure, okay? Her letter is food for mushrooms, that's my opinion. She is carrying on and having a tantrum over things that are not in the contract. If she had the experience and the administrator had the experience and the board had the experience, the contract would cover these things. There's a reason people don't like government contracts. They're big contracts. They cover a lot of detail. To say that none of this, nobody would have ever thought of any of this if it hadn't happened, I'm sorry. This is boilerplate stuff. This is boilerplate. This is arguments over things that should not have ever happened. If this board maintained competent legal help and used it to investigate or sign off on these contracts before they're let, I know when this would have happened. If we had an administrator that had any experience with writing and entering contracts, this wouldn't have happened. There's a letter here that was on the table that I picked up as I walked in from an anonymous thing from somebody that gives their email address that questions the credentials of SSG, points out that they're not on an approved list of recognized operators from the Department of Health. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what this says. And, I mean, she told us, first she invited everybody to come up there and look at it. She told us the place was a mess. Now she's backpedaling at high speed. She told us that she's charging this town a ransom. And now to come up and want to pivot over an hour here and there and talk about overtime when there's no overtime mentioned in the contract is beyond the pale as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, Mr. Bruner, thank you. I think we've had.
I'm not sure I have done.
You've already.
As I said, that letter was filled with uncalled for personal attacks with assumptions of bad faith and accusations of ulterior motives. And you're apologizing and your board member just walked out. Well, I think that's very wrong.
Thank you, Mr. Burton. All right.
Mayor, we're beyond the extension.
No, 10 o'clock.
Yeah, we said it for 10 o'clock.
20 minutes.
It was
You said 10 o'clock.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, we did say it for 10 o'clock. You have not been recognized yet, Miss. Raise your hand and be recognized. Yeah, you may approach.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess based on that February 3rd video, I would have assumed that, yes, it was, Brianna said, come, and if anything changes from this, the positive would be that everyone comes up, sees what's going on, the public, the trustees, then Trustee Knudsen's mea culpa of saying that, yes, we're all involved in this. We didn't do our due diligence. We did not observe the plants. We didn't go up there. And so I guess that's where we were at. I think in a way, why, I don't know, it's gotten so dramatic. I would have thought Brianna would have just, if she had, I guess they misunderstood what was said in that video. And then I would have thought that Brianna would have just told Josh, like, oh, I heard you had people up to the plant. And that was just sort of between her and Josh. That was between an employee and an employer. And she would have just said, Josh, that's not the way I want to do that. They should go through the manager. Please do, dissuade anybody else from here on. And that would have been done. I am not sure how we've gotten to this point. Other than the fact that the person that was really involved in the mess up of these plants is Travis Loberg. And we've forgotten all that. Why is the state of the plants the way they are? Because of Travis Loberg not doing his due diligence in his job. That's why. Why was Travis, who was responsible for Travis Loberg? Corinne. Who is responsible for Corinne? You all. Who is responsible for you all? The public. And that's how it goes. Who owns the water plants? The public, the citizens. So therein it lies. Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Greer. And we're going to take comment from Ms. Greer, comment from Mr. Markle, and then we're going to vote on the motion.
I just wanted to point out to the mayor and to the board that the letter named no one. These people chose to name themselves. And in that way, no personal attack was made. And that was very deliberate on my part. I did not wish to publicly embarrass anyone.
Thank you, Ms. Greer. Okay, Mr. Markle, hey, no comments.
I wanted to speak to, Administrator Ferguson wasn't here when I began to speak before. That's why I asked that I'm here now. I wanted to speak to the previous mention of possibility for negative action or ill intention. And it was Ms. Patterson who reminded me that if, say, someone did show up to the plant with ill intent or to cause negative action, the damage that they could cause would be nothing compared to the state of the plant when these guys walked into it. The damage that was caused by poor management of that facility far outstrips anything that anyone might have done by accessing it for a tour. Okay? Consider that liability of the damage that we have to repair now, right? And the coverage that does not exist for it. You are our coverage for that liability, right? You're here to protect us from that, which will be hundreds of thousands of dollars, possibly, in malfeasance, mismanagement, right? So I think you might be focusing a lot of attention on a non-issue well, the real issue is still very apparent.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second. No, I said I'm cutting off public comment. We have a motion and a second.
Asking about the last thing on their contract. The board.
We have a motion and a second on the board. We need to deal with our motion and a second. Are we ready to vote? All right, we have a motion to have the attorney draw up a waiver of liability to be signed by the three individuals and to protect SSG, John Moore, and the town of Payne.
Josh Moore.
Josh Moore, sorry, Josh Moore and the town of Payne. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. We have already dealt with the contract extension. If you have issues, please take them to the town administrator.
I just want to make a comment. That's all I wanted to say is.
All right, please come up to the podium to do that, Ms. Kendall. We need to extend the meeting again.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to extend the meeting for 10 minutes.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes.
Chris Kendall, Minnesota Creek Road. At the bottom of SSG's contract, it says task 50, Board of Trustee interaction. SSG will make themselves available for up to 4 hours of Board of Trustee meetings per month. Trustee interaction regarding water system operations is limited to the discussion of the entire Board of Trustees.
Okay.
So we're paying for them to talk
To the entire board.
to the board.
That contract hasn't been approved.
All right, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna, 2 comments, please. One is that this is an update to the existing.
Right, this is an update. This is not the
So it wasn't on the
original.
original? Okay.
The other just comment that I'd like to make is, it's my understanding that the water system is enterprise company.
Well, it's an enterprise fund.
Okay, so it's not a self-standing company. It's,
No, no, it's part of the town, but it's.
thank you for the clarification.
Okay. Next on our agenda is review and possible action regarding expenditure of funds for maintenance and repair by filter tech. Have in the packet the proposed repairs and what the costs are. Do you have anything to add to that, Ms. Ferguson?
The information provided on the agenda summary would be all that I would have added to that. And for anyone that doesn't have the packet in front of them, what I noted on here was that a major component for redundancy of the water treatment plant is operating skids to treatment and disinfection of the water, as well as running certain required maintenance and backwashing, known as cycle in place of the system. Currently, as been discussed, the plant is operating with one integrity tested, well-functioning skid, but it is precarious to remain in such a situation where there's only one skid operating the plant, because if that skid goes down, the plant would not be operational. Filter Tech, again, is the company that engineered, designed, and installed the plant and assists with some ongoing repairs and maintenance of the controls. And provided to the board is the cost to have that skid repaired. And staff recommendation is that the board approve the attached estimate as presented so we can get that work underway.
Okay, comments? Yes.
I have 2 questions, and the items not included in the quotation, but not limited to. Are they assuming that I'm assuming those parts are already in existence in the plant, so they're going to use existing parts? And is there a contingency if they're found to have any of these are defective and need to be replaced during this reinstall?
So I typically ask the board to not to approve it for the exact dollar amount and to include a contingency. So I would suggest that the board do that. This is, again, they're pretty, they did inspect everything and are pretty well skilled in knowing exactly what they're working with. It's in there and they have been in and looked at it. But I would recommend the board add a little bit, maybe not to exceed 9,000 or 10,000, so that they can work within the just over around 8,000 that they've got, but have a little bit of contingency that doesn't require coming back to the board before they do the repair.
Would it be, so right now we're at about 5, 6, 7, 8, over 8, close to 9.
No, it's 8,300.
8323.
So should it be a percentage?
It can be a not to exceed a percent or a dollar, either one. Yeah, it's at the board's discretion.
But if they do need to exceed, what does that mean? They come back for a,
If it went over the percentage or dollar amount, I would have to bring it back to the board before it was approved.
okay.
All right, would somebody like to make a motion?
Sure, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the proposal by Filter Tech for the expenditure of funds for maintenance repair, the Lamborn Mesa water treatment plant in the amount indicated on their proposal, not to exceed 10% above that proposal.
Okay, you have a second.
I'll second.
Okay, further discussion from the board? Okay, from the public, yes, Ms. Greer?
Madam Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
I have not read this scope of work, but I do want to encourage the town to consider that it's not just skip 2 that needs repair. There are additional pumps that need repair. The entire chemical backwash system is cracked and broken and will be again without engineering considerations to secure the tanks for the next time the plant floods, as they do from time to time. I just want to make sure that those are in there, and that if they're not, you consider additional budget for filter check for those items.
They are not included in this. This is specific just for the skid, but Filter Tech is in the process of providing a complete task list overview of all the items in there that they could do the repair that are part of the system that they designed, as well as the cost estimate for that. So I do anticipate to have that to bring to the board very near future.
Thank you. All right, anything else from the public? Yes, Mr. Berger.
Yeah, I think there should be a statement from the board that as these repairs and investigations progress, that the people making them should be aware that there could be an investigation. There could be I think you have to ask the question, has there been neglect that goes beyond simple negligence? Has there been criminal neglect? Has there been a failure to provide a required function by someone in a position of responsibility for this resource, these resources? And I hope that such an investigation takes place. And I think that everybody should be aware that the destruction of evidence is against the law. And that as these things proceed, evidence of extreme neglect, something beyond normal wear and tear, should be preserved and reported. There's also, I think, I have to ask your attorney, but I think there's laws against overlooking things that are covered by a law and against the law. The failure to provide a required function of an officer or employee of the town. I'm not sure how far that goes, but I think you should be asking those questions.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the expenditure. Oh, thank you. To approve a motion to approve to expend funds not to exceed 10% over the amount in the filter check proposal dated 14th of February. Are you ready to vote? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, that motion passes. Okay, we've got 4 minutes. We have a review of a possible letter. Do we, let me ask you, Ms. Ferguson, here are the next 2 items date sensitive?
They are, the letter of intent is, yes, they are. To provide very quickly to the board, we participate with Delta County as a whole in the countywide multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan. So this is your emergency plan if something major was to happen. We participate, they do this review and provide this every 5 years. The one we have right now expires actually in 2023, I believe. And so what is in the packet, the next two agenda items, the first is a letter of our intent to participate again, and that we would continue to participate in that plan. And I'm gonna go ahead and give an overview of the second item, which is a letter of support to Delta County supporting their grant to perform, to do the required update. The in-kind for the town is the participation. So that is our in-kind of the hours that we attend. I already attend MAC meetings, which is the multi-area jurisdictional meetings. And so it's that participation in attending those meetings and then they come to the board and they present the updates and the board accepts that upon the completion of the draft.
Okay, we have 1.5 minutes before our meeting expires again. Do we want to extend the meeting? Okay. Can somebody make a motion?
Okay. 10:15.
Okay.
10:20.
All right, we have a motion to extend the meeting 10:20. Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, can we get a motion to,
I know that we,
thank you.
approve our participation with the county hazmat planning. No, we support their grants and we participate in hazmat program.
So you want to make two motions or one motion?
What can we do it with one?
We can probably do it with one, yeah.
All right, one.
Okay. Yes. So my understanding of your motion is that you move that we agree to participate in the multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan update and write a letter of support for the grant.
Yes.
All right. Discussion from the board.
We'll get a second.
Oh, yeah, we haven't had a second. Did somebody second that?
Second.
Okay. Discussion from the board. All right. Discussion.
Just a real quick thing.
Yeah.
In the interest of time. It's really important that we are prepared for floods. It's really important that we're prepared for fires. It's really important that we're prepared for any kind of emergency that might happen, like we had the water emergency a couple of years ago. So I think this is a really critical kind of thing that we do. It's looking out in the future of what might be happening. We had a serious fire that destroyed a bunch of homes in the Boulder area earlier this year. We're in the same kind of fire mitigation areas. This is a really critical thing for us to be involved in.
Okay. Anything else from the board? All right. Anything from the public? Yes, Ms. Bird.
With respect to emergency response planning, emergency response planning is a requirement of your water permits and is currently nowhere to be found in terms of being at plans. Or I found one draft copy from many years ago, so I just wanted to bring that to your attention with respect to this item.
Thank you. All right. Anything else? All right. We have a motion and a second to agree to participate in the multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan and to sign a letter of support for the grant for that plan. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passed. Yes.
If I may, the next item on the agenda was the audit of the sound system. What was included in the packet was a spreadsheet of going back to 2018. It includes more than just the sound system. And I would request if the board would permit that we table this to the next meeting. That also would give me an opportunity to put the verbiage that I was going to provide in the packet.
Okay, can we get a motion to continue this to the next meeting?
I move that we continue this item to the next meeting.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, now we have two ad hoc committee reports.
Disbursements.
Oh, we forgot. Yeah, we got to do disbursements. All right. Can we get a motion on disbursements?
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve payment of accounts payable in the amount of $61,656.77. A loan payment of $74,000. Transfer the payroll account and payroll of $18,106.51 and payment of payroll taxes of $7,718.97.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Questions from the board? Yes.
Sorry, let me get to the page. Oh gosh, so I had a question on the payment, the loan payment. I was just curious why we are, I'm sorry, I can't get to it.
66.
Thank you. Why we're paying what looks like the full interest for the entire life of the loan and why we're doing that in this payment. I just don't understand.
I have to look at the chart.
So this is, we paid, this is the AMCO bond, which is through the sewer. And this is, there's 2 payments a year, and this is the first one.
So it's what I was curious about. It looks like we are paying this maturity dates. So does each bond have its own maturity date? So each one of these is different. We're looking at 50,000. So then why is it 50,000 plus 24,000 and not 750? Maybe that should be my better question. Principal plus the interest for that 2022 payment, as opposed to $24,000 in interest. That's all I'm just reading.
Because that bond matures at, in March.
Right, but then the one next to it
They
matures
roll off
in 2023.
over the life of the bond.
Yes, it could be 2024.
But you're paying 50,000 in principal and 24,000 in interest to get to 74,000.
Did you hear that?
I did hear it. So regardless of this individual interest amounts associated with each year, you're going to be paying $24,000 of interest for every one of these loans that are listed here. Okay, thank you. And then I had a question on disbursements. I would like to know on the roof, the 3 water leak. Can you tell me which ones were which one was the fixing of the leak at the corner of Delta and Second? Assuming it's the 5,028 and then what the other 2 are for. The reason I'm asking is because we have so many leaks and I just want to know where they are. Or is this a leak in the plant? You know, this could have been a leak in the 1 million and the 2 million as opposed to a leak in the street. And I think we need to be tracking where we're spending our money in the system.
Right, so the 5,728.57 is Second and Delta.
Okay.
Oh, that's right, that's the attachment. I forgot, we have all these extra attachments now, sorry. 3,012.50 is the Third and Rio Grande.
Okay.
And the other one is for the 1,110 was just below the 2 million gallon water tank.
Thank you. And then I'd like to make a motion after we finish this disbursements motion, but it has to do with disbursements. Actually, what I would like to do is that we start seeing the invoices from Mr. Conklin, not because I'm checking on you, Jeff, but I think it's important now that we're doing an hourly rate, that we should see exactly what work Mr. Thompson's working on. As the board, he works at our pleasure, and I would like to see the invoices for what the topic is he's been spending time on. So we know what's been needing lawyer help and things like that.
We see those invoices even before the meetings, like we just reviewed his invoice.
Yeah.
Just not even, it's 6 o'clock tonight, we reviewed that invoice.
Right, but I'm thinking the public should see them too.
Well, they're public information.
Well, I'm thinking when we pay it, it would be really nice to have the invoice in front of us and not me have to go look at it.
See that file?
Yeah.
invoices.
How many are there? Well, there's two payments. That's why I'm asking. There's two separate payments for Mr. Conklin's time. So I'm assuming it's two invoices. Is that not so?
Yes, correct.
I just thought.
Yeah, and I'll just, they're in two invoices because I create individual matters. So there, I build some time related to the, one of the litigation matters. So there's a separate litigation account with respect to that matter. And then a general account for which there was some time that was at the end of January. You know, those are documents that the trustees are perfectly, you know, available to them. I will say that sometimes, and other attorneys will take the position that the individual time or the descriptions of the work completed may constitute attorney-client privileged communications. So in some instances, so I would just caution a complete open approach to that, but certainly all of the trustees you know, those could be made available to them. And I typically have pretty detailed time entries with each matter that I'm working on.
Okay, I appreciate that because at $2.10 an hour, it's going to start adding up, and I just am curious. So I withdraw that. I appreciate the discussion, and I will just come in and take a look at those invoices, so I can just get a handle on that.
All right.
Thank you.
We've got 45 seconds left.
You made the motion. You did.
Karen
Yes,
made the
we have
motion.
a motion to accept disbursements. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion carried. We have 31 seconds.
Oh, God.
And then the meeting is either over or,
I have some questions on the roof invoices. You guys just.
okay, Miss Kendall, would you please take this up with the county administrator?
But this is your job.
But we have 9 seconds left.
Well, you guys need to be reading your invoices more carefully because roof charged you 10 hours trucking and 27 hours labor.
Okay,
And he
it is
said
20,
he had
10,
3
20,
employees.
and the meeting is either extended or it is over. I do not hear.
Oh, I'm sorry, what was it?
No, we are out of time. Either we extend the meeting or the meeting is over.
I'd like to extend it 5 minutes.
Okay.
And the only reason is because the AWC was gonna be the end of this, and I would like to make a motion that the next agenda, that the AWC gets its own slot in the beginning so we can talk about those recommendations.
All right, then let's go ahead.
If I may, can we just add that as an agenda item? Because the reason that it's not on there is because following multiple conversations about the resolution language, I followed the resolution titles for the meeting exactly the way it's on that resolution. But we can add it as an agenda item under unfinished business.
Yeah, just for this next one, so we can talk about it more and get a better handle on it.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. We still have agenda items, but we're done. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
So I'm a little concerned with the way the discussion is going here. I really want to see the policy regarding broad access for trustees before I withdraw this initiative.
Yes, we'll see what he does. That's what I was.
I'm going to be looking for something that says they shall be granted access.
So I'm gonna.
Pretty much.
It just needs to go to the county administrator.
Right, and the town administrator shall schedule during business hours. I mean, you know, this is